Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 23 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 45, The Spark. Beep 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 beep. Nitra's optics snapped open at the small alert on her console, bringing her attention directly down to the screen. Giving a confused, she began typing in commands until she found what the sensors had picked up. Something was falling down through the planet's atmosphere, and it was coming in hot and fast. The Decepticon hacker checked her surroundings to make sure she was alone before whispering, "Computer, identify." The computer made a small note on the object, with Cybertronic text appearing above a line that pointed to the descending blip. Object is Cybertronian stasis pod. Model, protoform transport. Ooh, Nitra's voice warbled as she chuckled, rubbing her hands together. This was a golden opportunity. If I can get a hold of that pod, I'll have something very useful in my possession. She leaned over the keyboard and began hastily typing in another command. Calculate landing coordinates, rapido. Before anyone, VWOM*, EEP. Nitra. Skywarp's sudden arrival managed to make the hacker jump out of her seat without even standing up, causing her to haphazardly land back in it and then topple over. Gah. For Primus' sake, would you grow a spinal structure? Faw. What? Nita threw her legs forward and sat up, pointing an accusing finger at the black and purple seeker. You were the one who scared the oil out of me, Cabron. The heck are you trying to do? Skywarp grumbled, crossing his arms as he lifted his head up. I was trying to make sure you were doing your job. You know, after the whole kitty cat incident the other day. Stomping her foot in protest, Nitra got up, fixing her chair before plopping herself back down in front of her console. Those gatitos were adorable, don't judge me. She furrowed her irises as she put her focus back on the incoming pod. Anyway, leave me alone. Can't you see I am working? Ah, good, because here comes the boss. That made the hacker do a double take. What? Sure enough, there were Starscream and Thundercracker, both of them entering the main bridge and setting their optics directly on her. You've gotta be kidding. Nitra deadpanned. Kidding about what, Nitra? Starscream asked, raising an iris at her. I would hope that you're following your tasks much better than the day before. But then, he noticed the screen behind her, which piqued his interest. Oh, and what is this? Did you find something? Bleep. Nitra couldn't prepare her fib of an answer before the computer beeped again and provided her with the results of its scan. Stasis pod re-entry path, erratic. Impossible to compute exact landing coordinates. The Seeker brothers all recoiled at the news in shock, shouting out in unison, a stasis pod. Goddammit. Nitra rubbed her optics in annoyance, knowing that there was no hiding that from them now. There goes my bargaining chip. Nevertheless, she got right back into the flow of things and confirmed the situation. Yes, a stasis pod. I was about to report it to you as soon as I got a hit on its landing site. She went back to her workstation as the three Seekers crowded around her, much to her chagrin. But it seems that wherever this thing's gonna land, we can't pinpoint the exact location. Starscream pondered that with a hum. I see, computer, give us the best estimate. The screen changed to a layout of the globe, which spun around until it came up on the continent of Africa. There, the computer zoomed in on the northeastern part of the continent, showing images of a barren desert and several, triangular-shaped structures. Okay, the heck is this place? Skywarp asked. Nitra rolled her optics at his ignorance. It's Egypt. You would know this if any of you took the time to actually research the planet. I think I saw those triangle things in an old movie I watched recently. Thundercracker noted. They're called the pyramids, I think. HMPH, I don't care what they're called. All I know is that a stasis pod is going to be landing in that wasteland and we should waste no time in retrieving it. But, prior to giving any orders, Starscream made an abrupt realization. But wait, no doubt the Autobots likely picked up on this signal as well. Even if we were to send an entire battalion of our forces there, we'd be met with heavy resistance. At that, Nitra brightened up a bit. Oh, but that's the fun part, Starscream, raising her hand. Nitra brought up her own personal holographic interface, showing an image of North America, as well as several Autobot signals occupying the southwest region of the United States. Get this, most of the Autobots are on this continent. There's only like, 1 or 2 who aren't present. This can work to our advantage if we can cut off their communication to their base. Ah, yes, excellent. Very good indeed, Nitra, just one teens tiny question, though. Starscream's smile quickly disappeared as a serious scowl took over his features. Why did you not inform me of this little mobilization beforehand? Nitra yelped and leaned away as Starscream got right in her face. I didn't think it was that big a deal. And after that whole incident with the rendezvous point the other day, I didn't think you'd want to concern yourself with to do with the Autobots for a while, so. The fact that almost every Autobot is on this side of the globe is, in fact, something I would want to concern myself with. Starscream barked, pointing a finger straight down for emphasis. Do I have to tell you to use your head, Nitra? Or must I kick you out and ask Megatron to send a better hacker? Nitra vehemently shook her head, her expression petrified in fear. Goo, I swear to Primus, it's like working with sparklings. Oh well, at least this does present a fortuitous opportunity. His scowl deepened at Nitra. You say that you can cut off their comm links with their base. Why yes, sir. Nitra affirmed. I've just gotta get closer to them to make it work. That proved to be less than ideal, especially since, in the Autobots' view, Nitra was supposed to be dead. Still, this was their best shot at getting a new member to their ranks. Very well, but remain in vehicular mode so that they don't notice you. Oh, and of course, this should go without saying but, his hand shot down and grabbed Nitra by her collar strut, pulling her up with a yelp until she was eye to eye with the glaring seeker. Do not fail me this time. Are we clear? SC, Claro. Nitra was thrown away from Starscream, wherein she transformed into her Santa Fe vehicle mode. I'll go there right now. Good. Without paying her any mind, Starscream turned back to his brothers. Thundercracker, Skywarp, retrieved Barricade and Flatline. Knowing the Autobots, the only one who is likely left at their base is their medic, meaning that he is the only one qualified to handle the stasis pod to begin with. He narrowed his optics. No doubt he will make a desperate attempt to save it and get it in their hands. Skywarp pounded a fist into his palm eagerly. Ah, so we'll be able to take out their doctor while getting the pod. Hey, sounds good to me. Thundercracker saluted to his brother. Right, and should any other Autobots show up with him, we'll take them out, ASAP. Just what I wanted to hear. Starscream waved his hand, motioning for all of them to move out. Now go, Decepticons. And bring that pod to me as soon as possible. Once the Seekers left the room, he glared pointedly down at the magenta and purple truck next to him. And that means you as well, Nita. Be sure that your cover isn't blown, understood? Why yes, Starscream. With that, the Decepticon Air Commander began making his way out of the room, and Nitra's demeanor soured immediately. She had lost her chance. HMPH, Tin Tyrant. Little did she know that Starscream had similar sentiments to her. Cantankerous cadet. And so that's basically my plan. What'd you think? Kiyoka asked this as she, Izuku, Bumblebee and Jazz were traversing across the Arizonan desert, having just recounted her plan regarding her internship with Snake Eyes just moments before. The 4 of them were out in the open air, with the 2 Autobots in their robot modes since there was absolutely, undisputedly no one else around. Why were they so sure? Because no sane person would be out this far out a dry desert on a hot as blazes day like today. Thankfully, the Autobots had AC, but Kiyoka had asked the group to stop so that she could explain her plan in full. And it was evident by the looks on the bots and Izuku's faces that they were absolutely not prepared for what she had to say. I'm guessing it was a bit much. Kiyoka prompted. Yeah, kinda. Izuku exclaimed, his expression incredulous as he stared at his best friend. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind on the matter since hanging around the punk rocker had made him much more outspoken. Kiyoka, I'll admit, sometimes your plans are ingenious, but this one. It sounds like a fool's errand. Kiyoka tightened her lips and furrowed her brow, placing her hands on her hips defiantly. Izuku Midoriya, are you calling me a fool? Well, you and just like that, Izuku began crumbling, realizing he probably screwed up. And not directly per se, but Kiyoka, you must realize how insane this plan sounds, right? Zeked. Hey, you're crazy, ZRRKT, girl. Bumblebee echoed using part of a Buck Cherry song. Jazz was also rather on the fence about this. Gotta admit, Kyo, this sounds like something only the most headstrong of bots would think they'd be able to pull off. An almost wrecker-level mission. He locked his sights with his human companions, asking her seriously, you really think you can march into this Snake Eyes guy's place and get the lowdown on who he is? What if it's a trap or something? That is why I'll have you accompany me, remember? Kiyoka emphasized by pointing finger guns up at Jazz with a knowing grin. You've told me how good you were at espionage, which means you'd be able to get me out of any traps if this guy isn't on the up and up. You can even use your holoform to prevent him from finding out about your real self. The Autobot first lieutenant winced as he saw the girl's point, but at the same time, he knew it was his job to try and talk her out of it. Well, I guess, but you gotta think that Prime wouldn't let ya go through with it. Putting yourself in potential danger for the sake of an investigation that an experienced adult hero could do. Even with his visor on, Kiyoka could tell that Jazz's gaze was full of concern. Don't ya think it might be too much of a risk? I know it's risky, but it's a risk I'm willing to take to make sure that the school is safe. Kiyoka said with determination. Izuku stepped forward again, raising an imploring hand to her. Kiyoka, please realize that we just want to make sure that you are safe. And I'm sure that Optimus would agree. Izuku, I'm not just some porcelain doll, you know. Her interruption took the green-haired boy aback, Izuku stepping away as she swiped a hand in front of herself. I'm training to be a hero, so the way I see it is. If this Snake Eyes guy is a hero, then great. I get to be trained by a mysterious professional. But if Snake Eyes isn't who they say they are, then Jazz can help me get out of there. She stepped to Izuku, getting right up close to drive her point home. Either way, we learn more about a mysterious person who not even most heroes know about. And hopefully, we'll ensure the safety of the school as a result. Either way, I've already accepted the offer, so I'm going. She pointed a finger at his chest. And there's nothing that you, Kiyoka moved her finger up to the Autobots, or they can do to stop me. There was a long, awkward silence after Kiyoka ended her mini-speech, her eyes still locked directly on Izuku as he let it all sink in. And, as he stared into her determined, and frankly, quite pretty, dark purple eyes, Izuku came upon a realization, what am I doing? I'm actively trying to stop someone from doing something that could be considered heroism. With a heavy sigh, Izuku brought a hand up to his forehead, craning his neck down in shame. Great, now I'm the fool, he lamented. If anything, that only made Kiyoka more confused. The last thing she'd wanted to do was make him feel bad about himself, after all. Wait, what? No, Izuku, that's not what I meant at all. She rested a comforting hand on his shoulder. I just wanted to get my point across, that's all. I'm sorry if I... Kiyoka, it's okay, it has nothing to do with what you said. Izuku interjected, bringing his own hand up to grasp hers in reassurance. I'm just upset with myself for trying to deny this from you. Here I am trying to become the world's greatest hero, a successor to All Might himself, but also trying to stop you from doing something inherently heroic. He gave a hollow chuckle as he shook his head. If anything, I'm the idiot for doing that. Izuku put on a smile and nodded to Kiyoka. You should go for it, without question. It was Jazz and Bumblebee's turn to be utterly surprised. Hold on, back up, what? The former exclaimed. Zerked, are you nuts? Bumblebee agreed. Izuku briefly glanced up to the two Autobots. Yeah, and I mean it. Kiyoka deserves a chance to see her plan through. He brought his attention back to the earphone jack user. And I'll support it, 100%. Huh, wow, talk about a 180. Kiyoka mused, though still gave him a thankful smile in return. But thanks, Green Bean. I appreciate your support. And don't worry, I promise that I'll be careful. Letting out a short, apprehensive breath, Izuku nodded once again in understanding. That's all I can ask of you, good luck. There was a short pause after that as the two simply looked at one another for a few moments, all while Jazz and Bumblebee watched on. However, the first lieutenant couldn't help but smirk as he cleared his vents and said, Ahem, well, that was a real touchin' moment, that's for sure. Guess I'll have to go alone with this plan after all that, but I think you're forgetting something. The human duo peered up to him, confused. What do you mean, Jazz? Kiyoka asked, only for Jazz to respond by pointing back down at them. She and Izuku were left perplexed, but only for a moment as they slowly realized. They were still holding hands. Sorry. Izuku apologized, his cheeks as red as a beet as he let go of Kiyoka's hand and bowed many times in rapid succession. I didn't know we were still. And no, it's okay, I didn't realize either. Kiyoka insisted, pulling her hand close to her chest out of embarrassment. Bumblebee smiled under his protective mouth guard, bringing his hand up to hold back his hoarse, wheezing laughter. Jazz, on the other hand, simply chortled and transformed back into vehicle mode, opening his passenger door. Hee, come on now, we're burning daylight. Grimlock ain't gonna find himself, ya know. Why yeah, of course. Kiyoka practically clamored to get into Jazz's alt mode, slamming the door shut behind her as she moved into the back seat to curl into the fetal position. Oh god, I was gonna die of humiliation back there. Izuku, why do you do this to me? She buried herself in her knees, making a sheepish, squeaking noise in her mortification. Izuku, meanwhile, was left shell-shocked by how quickly Kiyoka climbed into the Porsche as Jazz drove off, leaving him and Bumblebee behind. He brought his hand up in front of his face, still feeling the remnant warmth of the smaller hand he had held not 10 seconds ago. Did I screw up? ZKRT, love is a fickle thing, sport. Bumblebee pat Izuku on the back. ZRKT, it'll break you down and spit you out before you can say, ZRKT, I've got butterflies in my stomach. Thanks for the visual. Izuku deadpanned before sighing once again, running a hand through his hair. Well, guess we should get on with the search. Let's go. With that, Bumblebee transformed and Izuku got in the passenger seat, the VW Beetle zooming off after Jazz as fast as he could. About half an hour later, they finally made it to their destination, an abandoned dig site in the side of a large mountain out in the middle of nowhere. It was almost as if the mountain itself had risen out of the flatlands, which the teens couldn't help but be astonished by. You don't see stuff like this every day in Japan, Kiyoka remarked, having emerged from her embarrassment cocoon. Yeah, no kiddin'. Makes me wonder how we woulda ever navigated this continent if we'd landed here instead of Japan. Jazz pulled to a stop and opened his doors. Now come on, let's get down to it. He watched Kiyoka go to climb out, only for her to freeze mid-step when she saw Bumblebee stop next to them. Jazz hummed to himself before activating his holoform and reaching out to give Kiyoka a supportive pat on the arm. Listen, Kyo, I ain't Momo, so I can't exactly help ya in the romance department. But what I do know is that, ya can't stay in me forever. I gotta transform. Didn't Mina stay in Bulkhead once when he transformed, though? Kiyoka countered hopefully. Jazz rolled his eyes at that. Hey, because Bulkhead's got the room. I don't. Kiyoka deflated with an annoyed grumble, which only made Jazz laugh more. Hee, I get ya, really I do. But hey, he hasn't got out of B yet either, so Izuku's probably just as nervous as you are. Don't ya think? I mean, I guess. Kiyoka stared in reluctant silence for a few seconds before pursing her lips and bringing her hands up to her cheeks with a harsh smack. Screw it, I'm not some bashful little girl with an elementary school crush. I'm gonna get the hell outta here and show him I'm not scared. Atta girl. Go for it, Jazz supported. With that, Kiyoka hopped out of Jazz, allowing him to transform. Bumblebee transformed nearly the exact same moment, and revealed Izuku on the other side of his leg. Oddly enough, the boy's cheeks were fairly red, though not inherently from shyness. Instead, they seemed to be palm marks. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw her as well. Kiyoka, are you okay? Huh, what are you talking about? The boy pointed to his own cheeks, which made Kiyoka reach into her purse and pull out a compact mirror. Sure enough, her own cheeks were just as pink and with palm-shaped marks as well. Well, you see, but she shook her head, dismissing the point. Let's just forget it. We've got a mission to get through. Alright, gotcha. The two humans awkwardly proceeded forward toward the abandoned dig site, all while Jazz and Bumblebee observed from behind. They're down bad for each other, the lieutenant noted. B lowered his volume as much as it could go and responded, "ZRKT, at least out loud, I won't say I'm in love," and then he immediately regretted his decision the moment Kiyoka's head whipped around, her eyes wide in a death-piercing glare as her blush returned tenfold. Izuku didn't see it, but it was enough to put an innate fear into Jazz and Bumblebee. "ZRKT, I'm screwed." Rightfully so. Jazz shuddered as he turned his head away from his human companion's sights. Let's just get this done, huh?" The four proceeded up the mountain face, and it wasn't long before they stumbled upon the abandoned dig site, distinguished by the rest of the terrain thanks to the significant indentations in the earth that were left behind. Ahem, guess humans don't leave much behind when it comes to digging up ancient beasts, huh? Izuku shook his head. Nope. Paleontologists are always pretty thorough when it comes to picking up after their digs. He walked over to a nearby hole in the mountainside, one that was long and wide enough to stick his whole arm in. Though they're not as committed to filling in holes, especially out in no man's land like this. Kiyoka wiped her brow, once again feeling the effects of the desert heat. Phew, how any scientist can stay out here for an extended period of time is beyond me. Her gaze trailed across the wide, open space, the flat land of the arid desert stretching for as far as she could see. You guys really sure Grimlock could be buried somewhere out here? I mean, if he was, what are the chances that his body could stay intact out in these conditions? Jazz and Bumblebee both winced at her point. HMPH, Prime had the same idea, believe it or not. With the humans' attention on him, he explained, in fact, I'm wondering if Op thinks Grim's even still alive. I mean, stasis lock is a thing, for sure, but, to go 65 million years without even a drop of energon. It's possible, sure, but also really unlikely. So, are you guys expecting to just find a body out here? Kiyoka inquired. ZRKT, if worse comes to worse. Bumblebee nodded. ZKRT, but we can, ZRKT, probe his mind, ZRKT, if we find him. Izuku tilted his head. Probe his mind. If a bot's processor is still intact, even after going offline, then the info from it can be extracted and be replayed. Jazz clarified further. Theoretically, if Grim really is, well, gone, then we could still get an idea on where the Ark is, but those are drastic measures. That made the two students glance to one another in uncertainty, feeling genuinely uncomfortable hearing that. Are you willing to go that far to find the Ark, though? Izuku pressed with a serious tone. Jazz shook his head. Nah, no way. Like I said, those are drastic measures. Ones that are more likely to be used by cons than Autobots. For us, it's disrespectful of the dead to do something like that. The bot waved his hand, attempting to change the subject. But let's backtrack to a more positive note. A bot can survive a long time in stasis lock, even without a pod. If we're lucky, we'll be able to find Grim and he'll be alright, hopefully. Now, let's get to scanning. B. Bumblebee gave an affirmative buzz before flipping out his battle mask and visor, the two bots shifting their optics into scan mode. Within moments, their vision changed drastically, becoming shrouded in a coat of blue as several bits and pieces were highlighted in a bright green all around them. These objects metal ones, though they were far too small to be any piece of Cybertronian technology. More than likely they were bits and pieces of broken equipment that had managed to slip by the paleontologists. However, something did manage to catch Jazz's optic. A high energy output coming from a small hole in the side of the mountain, which was instead highlighted in a brighter blue. Ooh, well, what do we got here? He and Bumblebee approached the hole, noting that it couldn't have been any bigger than their fists. That, however, would have to change. B. Start digging. We might have just found what we've been looking for. Bumblebee saluted and the two bots began using their hands to dig the hole deeper. You mean you guys found him already? Izuku exclaimed. We'll find out soon. Jazz called back, the duo scooping handfuls of dirt and rock at an active pace. Huh, this might have been easier than we thought. Kiyoka smiled victoriously. But, almost as soon as she said that, the hole suddenly collapsed inward, leading B and Jazz to take a step back as rock and sand crumbled around it. Whoa, fall back. The humans followed his orders and, after about half a minute, the rock stopped crumbling, leading to a slightly larger hole now going into the mountain. And from the stronger readings he was getting, Jazz knew there had to be something big down in that hole. Damn, don't think that's Grimlock, but I've got a good feeling about this. He tried to work his way into the hole, but one leg in and he already could tell he wasn't gonna fit. Gah, seriously. ZRKT, leave it to me. Bumblebee transformed back into Beetle mode and opened his doors, ushering Izuku and Kiyoka to get in. ZRKT, onward into the depths. Alright, B, we're coming. The duo climbed into the front seats before B zoomed off into the hole, driving down the rather steep slope before coming to a very sudden stop. There, right before their very eyes, the trio were left astonished by the glowing crystalline substance before them. No way, Kiyoka exclaimed, getting out of B in order to call up Jazz. You won't believe it, we found a whole bunch of energon. Jazz was left astonished by the news. No foolin'. Awesome. You guys stay right there, I'm gonna get Prime on the horn and tell him. Izuku stepped out as Bumblebee transformed back into robot mode, the three taking a seat at the bottom of the small cave. The amount of energon was surprising, to be sure, but all the same, they were grateful to find it. Well, we might not have found Grimlock, but I can guarantee that this is gonna help us out tremendously. Hey, yeah, bet the others are still frustrated they had to miss out, though. Kiyoka pondered. Wonder what they're up to right now. Back up top, Jazz had stepped away from the cave and activated his comlink, wanting to get a hold of Optimus as soon as possible. Yo, Prime. We've got some good. CCCHHZZZZ, Jazz. Icano, CCCHHZZ. In an instant, Jazz's excitement turned to worry as the connection between comms began shorting out. P Prime, can ya read me? He then began trying the others, but to no avail. Each one he'd try, he got the same result, endless static. Windblade, Sideswipe, Bulk, you there? Jazz trailed off as he made one last try, this time to HQ. Red, can you read me? Something's gone. CCCCHHHZZZZZZZ. Jazz grimaced when nothing came through, leading him to look off into the distance with a despondent, "Oh, that ain't good." Across the word in the land of Egypt, Red Alert was hard at work, wasting little time in this incredibly important procedure. He was lasering through a panel of the stasis pod to access its internal circuitry, and once said panel fell off, he did a thorough scan to find out what was wrong. For the most part, everything seemed to be alright, except for one piece. His multi-tool shifted into a tiny grabber that he inserted into the inner workings, where he pulled out a small, and very charred electronic chip. Gah, not good. What's not good? Flare Up asked, rushing up the second she heard that. Well, the POD's re-entry certainly damaged it more extensively than I first thought. It's disabled the activation sequence, burned out the locking chip. Red Alert raised his head with a short sigh. If we don't do something quick, this protoform spark will surely be extinguished. Excuse me, Red Alert. The Sky Spy piped up, this time with Ibarra's voice behind it. But what exactly do you mean by the spark being extinguished? Is that an integral part of the protoform? Red Alert shook his head, his tone noticeably irritated. It's not just a mere part, Shiozaki. The spark of a Cybertronian is the bot's very core of what makes every single one unique. Without it, we are nothing. Whoa, so like a human heart. Tetsu piped up. Sounds more like a brain to me if it's what makes him unique. Setsuna commented. May scoffed at that notion. Bah, wrong. The brain is obviously a Cybertronian's processor. The spark is something else entirely, though considering that it is what pumps energon through a transformer, it's kinda closer to Metalhead's assessment. Tetsu sounded pretty proud of himself for getting it right. I knew it, wait, Metalhead. However, after mulling it over, it was Itsuka that came up with the closest deduction yet. Actually, the more I think about it, the more it sounds like a Cybertronian spark is, like a human soul. Something that makes us all unique and distinct from one another. Yeah, pretty much fits the bill. That is actually quite the observation, Itsuka. Ibarra mulled in astonishment. I would have never guessed that robotic beings could have their own souls. Well, we do. Red Alert said bluntly as he set his attention back to the protoform. But now's not the time for this. We need to save this one, no matter what. Highwire pumped his tiny fist down near Red Alert's foot. Well then, let's get in gear. What do we do exactly? There was a long pause, Red Alert quite visibly frustrated. Not with any of them, however, because he was frustrated with himself. I wish I knew. I don't have any spare locking chips on me or at the base, this could be dangerous. He turned toward Flare Up once again. If your pod doesn't have a functioning locking chip, your protoform is at risk of total destabilization. And without it, stasis lock isn't possible at all. So, it's hopeless. Flare Up brought her hands up to her chest worriedly. There has to be a way. And there is, though it involves a certain procedure. Red Alert pointed up to his head. You see, once a protoform solidifies, they inherently form a locking chip inside their processors. It is what enables stasis lock after all. So, if I could use my own. Wait. Flare Up raised her hand. Red, as much as it's valiant of you to offer up your own locking chip, you do know how hard it'd be to perform that kind of surgery on yourself, right? Her tone became more confident as she placed a hand over her chest. Please, let me take that place. Our new teammate deserves some sort of chance, and, you know way more about protoforms than I do. Please, let me do this. Red Alert had to admit, he wasn't expecting Flare Up to offer herself up so swiftly and with such passion. Still, he was hesitant. Are you sure, Flare Up? Because once I take that locking chip out, you won't be able to go into stasis lock if something bad happens. Flare Up, instead of responding directly, simply turned her back toward Red Alert and sat down on the nearest rock. I'm ready for the procedure, Doc Bot. Do it. Very well. In truth, while he kept a stoic demeanor, a part of Red Alert had to admit, he was proud of Flare Up for making such a brave contribution to this important undertaking. He stepped up behind her and produced a scalpel from his multi-tool. This'll only take a nano-click, but you'll have to go into offline. I could use the snooze. Flare Up complied. Repair mode. At those words, Flare Up's head hung low and her optics dimmed, taking her into a land of slumber. Which was nothing but a large, black void. When Flare Up opened her optics, she saw absolutely nothing, and no matter how far she walked, the scenery was the same. It felt like she had been moving for hours, but still nothing, until something bright flew past her head at breakneck speed. She whipped around and gasped as the orb of light spun back around and, from out of the ether, Red Alert spun into being. Cheers, love, he spoke with a grin. Red, what is this? Flare Up called out. In response, Red Alert held out his right hand and opened it, revealing something astonishing sitting within his palm, a spark. The glowing, pulsating blue sphere of light kept beating as Red Alert raised his hand up, hoisting it high as it began to float on its own. Yep, the very thing which makes us what we are. Every Cybertronian, Autobot or Decepticon has one. And each is different. All of a sudden, from out of the inky black void, thousands of sparks began flying through all around them, making the area light up with incredible colors. When a spark goes online, there's great joy. Flare Up marveled at the sight in awe before it abruptly stopped, and the spark that Red was holding before snuffed out, its particles falling around the somber medic. When one's extinguished, the universe weeps. Blip. Flare Up's optics lit back up, awakened from her brief stasis nap. Blimey. That was smashing. Tell me later. Red Alert said, holding her locking chip in a small gripper from his multi-tool. And please, give me some space. This procedure will be delicate. The Autobot scout stood back with the Minicons as Red went back to the stasis pod, inserting the locking chip into the circuitry. Once he was certain it was in the correct position, he shifted his multi-tool into its soldering mode to fuse the chip into the circuitry proper. The others watched on in apprehension as he lasered in the final touches, before then moving to the console and typing in a command. As bits of code continued to fly by on the screen, the POD's computer spoke. Stasis lock restored. Implementing. All at once, inside the pod, the protoform began to solidify into a definite shape once again, its featureless body now housing the spark securely. Red Alert let out a nervous sigh, though everyone else was celebrating. Woo. Haha, yes. May exclaimed as the Sky Spy did a mid-air flip. Way to go, Red. Yes, very good work, indeed. Sir Shock praised as well. Now the protoform shall surely survive, correct? Hopefully. Red Alert breathed out, beginning to feel a little woozy after all of that. In reality, all I did was buy us some time. He sat himself down on a rock, holding his head in his hand. And even with my cooling vents on max, this desert sun is giving me heat flashes. Grinder tilted his head. So, what do we do now, Big R? Red set his hand upon the console and typed in more commands. Try and get the activation protocol back online. And hope the scanners can find something in this wasteland. He sighed and looked down to his chest. But if worse comes to it, we may have to just let the pod scan one of our alt modes in order to get this protoform online. Then if they want to scan something else when they get back, they can. Question. Tetsu piped up from the Sky Spy. Why not just bring it back through the ground bridge? Then we can find an alt mode here. The medic brought his attention to the drone with a serious demeanor. That is extremely dangerous, Tetsu. Exposing an unstable protoform to transwarp energy without the protection of the pod being completely sealed would spell disaster for it. It could absorb the surrounding energy and completely destabilize. He set his attention back on the pod. And even then, there wouldn't be any time to do that. Stasis lock only slowed down the spark's deterioration. We need to get this protoform a vehicle mode and online as soon as we can, or it's finished. There was a moment of tense silence to let everyone have that sink in. However, it didn't last long as an unexpected beeping started sounding from the Sky Spy. Oh, crap, now. May exclaimed before informing everyone, guys, bad news, we've got 3 Decepticon signals coming in and headed straight to your location. And now we have another problem. Red bemoaned. Flare Up, however, wasted no time in bringing out her pistols, her energy core beginning to glow bright blue. Don't worry, Red, I can handle these cons. You just keep doing what you're doing with the pod. We're coming with you, Flare Up. Highwire raised his hands and called for his teammates. Guys, you know what to do. All at once, the trio transformed and merged into Safeguard, the small combiner balling up a determined fist. Don't worry, we'll be sure to protect the protoform with our very lives. Smashing. Flare Up approved. Now let's go kick some Decepticons. Not far away, Barricade was seriously regretting accepting this mission as the hot desert sun beat down directly on him. The worst part about it was that the sand was too thick to transform and roll, which meant he had to run to his destination. Grr, this sucks. He reached up and activated his comlink. Ya think you could have bridged me any closer to the freaking pod, Flatline? I'm dying out here. Oh, don't be such a baby, Barricade. The Decepticon doctor admonished. Believe me, I would have been more than happy to do so if they had the exact coordinates for ZPOD's landing site, but unfortunately, that is not the case. But we have the Autobots, signals, don't we? Wherever they are, that must be where the pod is, right? There was a long pause following that, to which Barricade deadpanned, did you send me out here on purpose, Doc? Vought. No. Of course not. Flatline argued back. Herr Commander, what is the meaning of these? On the call, Starscream gave an annoyed sigh and chimed in. Listen Barricade, if we want to retrieve that pod, we need to take the Autobots off their guard, meaning that we need to lead their combatants away before bridging Flatline directly to Red Alert's location. Barricade grit his metal teeth at that. So what you're saying is that me and your brothers are the bait. See, you are learning, now go do your job. Starscream out. The call cut off, leaving Barricade to stomp his foot angrily in the sand. Gaah. I hate that fragging piece of walking slag. If it weren't for him, maybe I'd be second in command on this mission. Getting to order people around, maybe actually succeeding in some plans, he trailed off as another tantalizing thought crossed his mind. Getting to hang out with Swift all the time, hee pew asterisk, ah. Barricade spun around as rapid laser fire flew past his head, where he spotted a smirking flare-up standing high up on a large rock outcropping. Might wanna get your head out of the clouds there, mate, she said with a wink. I'm the only femme you should have your mind on at the moment. The Decepticon officer growled again, taking out his gun and yelling. We'll see about that, Auto Bum. In no time at all, things escalated into a firefight between the duo, red and blue lasers being exchanged between sides. However, Flare-Up was at a distinct advantage, which Barricade noticed immediately. Thanks to her lighter frame and blinking ability, she was able to move much faster than him, even while running through sand. Him, on the other hand, POMF, he tripped on a rock and landed headfirst in the dirt. Grr, frenzy. On cue, the little Minicon popped right out of Barricade's back, launching himself high into the air with a cackle. Hee, I'm on it, boss. He transformed into his Sawblade mode and then landed in the sand, activating circular saw to propel himself forward through the thick dirt. Make way, lady, because I'm coming to, clang, ah. Without warning, something kicked Frenzy out of the sand, forcing him to transform and confront whatever hit him. Of course, it was Safeguard, the Minicon combiner standing over him. That's as far as you go, you mini-maniac. Oh, great, a spoil sport. Frenzy took one of his guns off his back while shifting his left hand into its taser prod mode, hurling himself forward while firing wildly. Well, I'm not about to be spoiled. But even then, his attack was futile as Safeguard raised their hands and brought up their protective force field, the lasers bouncing off in several directions. With an angry yell, Safeguard attempted to shove his taser prod into the shield, but all it did was reroute the electric shock right back into him, making him scream, I, and get sent flying back, his body smoking while he twitched on the ground. Frenzy. Barricade went to help his comrade, but was immediately intercepted by Flare-Up, the scout kicking him right in the side and landing right on top of him. She followed up by aiming a shot right for his hand, blasting his gun out of his grasp. Gah, why you, Clunky didn't even get to finish his sentence. Flare-Up stomped down on Barricade's head hard, enough so to knock him out instantly. Sorry about that, love, Flare-Up sarcastically apologized, giving a thumbs up to Safeguard, but we don't got time to play. THOOM. Just then, a pair of impactful landings came from directly behind the duo, a pair of shadows now cast right over them. Flare-Up's optics widened as she slowly craned her head around, met with the sight of Thundercracker and Skywarp looming over the both of them. HMPH, what a pity. Skywarp scoffed, bringing out his shotguns. Thundercracker, meanwhile, held the Cybercaliber in his hand, the combined sword glowing as he pointed it at the Autobots. Because we haven't gotten the chance to play yet. Flare-Up and Safeguard glanced at one another, recognizing their disadvantage. Time out. Flare-Up asked, only to receive an answer in the form of several shotgun blasts. She let out a scream and immediately blinked away, speeding toward a destination several meters away. Skywarp wasn't impressed, though. HMPH, neat trick, VWOM once again. Flare-Up yelped as Skywarp disappeared and then reappeared right in front of her, his face now dangerously close to hers. But I can do something like that too. And just like that, the battle was on, the two exchanging fire as they battled to see who could outpace the other with their instantaneous movement. Thundercracker, meanwhile, went for a more easy-going approach. After all, the only ones standing in his way were a bunch of combined Minicons. I may be a Decepticon, but I ain't about to torment these little guys. Keeping a confident tenor, he lowered his blade and extended an appealing hand. Alright, little guys, listen. I don't wanna hurt ya. And the last thing I wanna do is drag this whole conflict out. So, here's what's gonna happen. You take me to the stasis pod and I'll make sure all of you live through this fight. Apologies, but that's a bit hard to believe when your brother is currently on the warpath. Safeguard countered. HMPH, yes, but I'll get him to stop. Thundercracker groaned. Skywarp's always been a, shoot first, speak later, bot. That much is obvious. Safeguard put their hands to their hips defiantly. But even so, we're not about to let you of all bots try and deal with us, they pointed up to the sword he held in his hand. Not after what you did to them. Thundercracker looked to the Cybercaliber, which started to jostle in his hand a little. Ah, right, yeah. You guys wanna try talking it out. The Blue Seeker huffed in amusement and threw the blade into the air. Be my guest. All at once, the Cybercaliber separated and transformed into its three components, sonar, runway and jetstorm. The trio landed in the sand, standing before the Minicon gestalt with runway at the forefront. Well, it's been a long time, guys, she said with her arms crossed. How about we try this again, Safeguard pursed their lips before they two separated, the street action team now confronting the air assault team face to face. Runway, Jetstorm, Sonar, Highwire stepped forward, his optics full of sadness as he gazed upon his old friends. What happened to you? What happened? Huh? We saw the light, that's what. Jetstorm insisted with a raised fist. Guys, I've got no idea what you're doing over on the Autobots side when the cons are where it's at. Are you even listening to what you're saying, Jetstorm? Sir Shock exclaimed, horrified by what she was hearing. You would have never said this back on Cybertron. This whole conflict is the reason why we Minicons wanted to leave the war behind, remember? Yeah, well, things change. Sonar said with a stoic voice. Sometimes, when you know you can't beat him, why not join him, right? Runway nodded in approval. Exactly. This war was never going to end with the Autobots as the victor. The fact that Optimus Prime himself was forced to leave Cybertron is more than enough proof for that. She raised her hands to her Minicon brethren, hoping to convince them. I implore all of you to consider your options. If you stick with the Autobots, you're going to be hunted down by Megatron anyway. So why not make the smart choice and join the winning team before it's too late? Grinder stomped his foot in defiance. You guys can't be serious. Can't you see that you've been reprogramed? They're just making ya think all that scrap. Sonar mimicked his move, getting right in Grinder's grill. Well, what if we like thinking like this better, The way I see it, you guys are the ones who need a reality check, and I think we'll be the ones to give it to ya. Right, Jetstorm? Slamming his fists together, Jetstorm agreed wholeheartedly. Heck yeah, we'll show you guys that Thundercracker's got our backs. Indeed. Runway concurred, much to her disappointment. I was really hoping that you guys would be more compliant, but it would seem we have no choice. In response, Sir Shock narrowed her sights at the air assault leader. Roller is alive as well. I know. Runway turned her head away. Then what would he say if he saw you all here and now? Tightening her fists, Runway snapped. Shut it. Air assault team, combine. With that, the Minicon trio reformed into their sword mode and returned to Thundercracker's hand, who gave the weapon a twirl before pointing it down at the Minicons. Last chance. Thundercracker reiterated. Stand aside. In response, the street action team reformed themselves into Safeguard, who raised their fists in solidarity. No, I don't think we will. Thundercracker grumbled before raising the Cybercaliber with a battle cry, which was met with Safeguard charging and leaping into the fray to meet the Seeker and their former companions head-on. Back with the pod, Red Alert could hear all of the chaos going on even as he worked tirelessly on getting the activation protocol back online. It was only a minor distraction, though, diverting all of his focus onto the task set before him. However, that didn't stop the Sky Spy from observing the battle from a safe distance, which then lowered back down to report to the medic. It looks like Flare Up and the others have their servos pretty full over there. Itsuka spoke up. That may be so, but I can't stop now. Red said as he finished putting in his command, only to get a less than stellar result. Program not accepted. Spark will terminate in 4.8 cycles. Gah. Red slammed his fist on the console, only for the Sky Spy to fly right in front of him. Hey, that won't help anything. May reprimanded. There's gotta be another way to input the program, right? Red took a deep intake of air, running every option he had through his processor. The pod might not accept a manual input, but if it could be downloaded from a bot who knew the input, that could be the key. With glimmer of hope in his spark, Red exclaimed, that's it. May, take the Sky Spy to a safe distance. I'm gonna try something. May wasn't all that sure what he was talking about, but if he was so sure about it, she wouldn't argue. Okay. The Sky Spy propelled itself into the air and settled up on one of the many rock formations, where the group were met by a startling sight. There, nesting atop the rocks, was a peregrine falcon. The bird of prey shrieked in surprise and leapt up, pecking and clawing at the Sky Spy with hostile intent. No. Bad birdie. Ack. Get off my baby, you overgrown pigeon. Down below, Red Alert had taken out a wire from his utility pack and plugged it into his arm, plugging the other end directly into the stasis pod's console. He began typing in a manual command whilst also giving a vocal 1, Download sequencer program through my central processor. The stasis pod blipped and replied. Warning. Process could cause damage to your CIRUITRY. Just do it. Red alert barked, which forcibly started the procedure. On the console screen, layers upon layers of code began flying by as the program was downloaded through Red alert, and immediately, he was met with a wave of pain unlike any he had felt before. Ow. Then, right at the connection point on his arm, an energy surge made the wire forcefully disconnect itself from the medic, and was also powerful enough to send him slamming into one of the rocky outcroppings. Thrown completely for a loop, Red alert was forced to his hands and knees as his internal computer reported. Circuit damage. Cooling systems down. Overheat and stasis lock IMMANET. His helm sparking from the process, Red alert grumbled and spoke through his intense pain. Override. Begin internal R repairs. Damage too extensive for robot mode. Transformation required for repairs. Red sighed and succumbed to the computer's wishes. Transform. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. Now in his Nissan patrol mode once again, Red alert felt an immediate sense of relief, also feeling his internal repair functions begin to start up. Well, I suppose this will mitigate things a bit. Now that I'm in vehicle mode, the pod should scan me and the protoform will, but then, the POD's computer spoke up again, all while a scanner rose up and began searching the area. DNA sequencers online. Scanning for compatible lifeforms. If he were still in robot mode, Red alert would have done a double take. Wait, what? Compatible lifeforms. DNA scanners. What kind of pod is this? Just then, a bright light began shining from Red alert's right, and he let out a gasp. A ground bridge portal had opened up directly next to him, and through it stepped a certain Decepticon he was hoping he'd never have to see again. MHM. If it isn't my old friend, Red alert. Flatline chortled as he loomed over the incapacitated medic, sporting a sadistic grin. What a shocking turn of events is, no. Flatline. Red alert attempted to shift himself into reverse, but his clutch was stuck. He couldn't move. Get away. Oh, I don't think I will, mean frooned. Flatline strolled right past the Nissan emergency vehicle, getting up close and personal to the stasis pod. For while your unfortunate state is certainly one to be capitalized upon, I'm afraid that will have to wait. He laced his fingers together and pushed them out away from his body, his servos clanging as if he were cracking his knuckles. For now, my objective is directly in front of me. It is time to bring a new Decepticon into Z-World. No. Red alert shouted, watching as Flatline brought his hands down to the console. Little did the Autobot doctor know, though, that the teens were still watching via the Sky Spy. May was thankfully able to lose that Falcon, but she and the others were left horrified when they saw Flatline emerge from that ground bridge, with Red alert incapable of defending himself or the pod. No. Red, you've gotta do something. May pleaded. Damn it. This must have been the Khan's plan all along. Tetsu barked in anger. Abara clenched hand over her heart in dread. Those other ones were just meant to distract Flare Up and the Minicons while their medic goes in for the pod. Such underhanded trickery. Setsuna's determination shone through as she shouted at May, we've gotta do something. May, doesn't that thing have any weapons on it? The pink-haired inventor grimaced at such an obvious oversight. No, but I probably should have put some in for a situation like this. May flung her hands up to her head as she began pacing back and forth, trying to think of some way to help her robotic friend. What do I do? I wish Prime and the others would here to help. Well, they're not. Tetsu jerked a thumb toward his chest. But we are. May, the Sky Spy has a tracker built into it, right? You've got its exact coordinates. Yeah, of course, wait. May's eyes widened as she realized what Tetsu was getting at. No way. Absolutely not, metalhead. There's no way I'm gonna send you guys into that war zone. But what other choice do we have? Setsuna countered, swiping her hand up to the screen where Flatline was closing in on the pod. There's no knowing if Flare Up or Safeguard can get there in time, and I doubt they even know that Khan is here, so logically, we're the only ones who can help Red and defend the pod. May bit her lip, seeing Setsuna's point in her words. Nevertheless, she was going to stand firm on Red's prior decision. You guys have no idea what you're getting into, though. You've never battled Decepticons, so you'd be going in at a disadvantage right off the bat. Surprisingly, however, it was Itsuka who backed the other two up. Maybe not, but I think it's safe to say that we're out of viable options at this point. I don't like disobeying orders either, but right now, Red Alert needs help. Her gaze was sympathetic as she approached May and put a hand to her shoulder. Otherwise, both he and the pod will be goners. May screwed her eyes shut, not wanting to look at the screen as she thought everything over. In reality, she knew that her friend needed to be saved, along with the pod. And without Optimus or the others, there really was only one possibility for victory left. With a heavy sigh, May settled a resolute gaze upon Itsuka and the others. Make sure they all come back alive. As the inventor went over to the ground bridge console, Itsuka gave her a nod in return. Of course, we will. She faced her fellow 1B students with a fist raised. Alright, guys, you in or what? Do you even need to ask, Kendo? Tetsu gave a wild grin. Of course, we are. Let's bust some Decepti chops. Setsuna cheered. Abara was a bit less sure, but still, even she knew that this was the only choice left. I don't look forward to the consequences of disobeying orders like this, but in the end, I'm sure it will be worth it. Let's go. Back in Egypt, Flatline was about to set his fingers upon the POD's console when something entered his peripheral vision, bringing his optics up. Was ist das? Before him was hovering some sort of miniature satellite, with a camera lens pointed straight at him. Flatline brought his optic closer to inspect whatever this was. Oh, hello, and who would you be? Clang, ACH. Shice. Stumbling away from the portal, Flatline was met with a forceful shout from the Sky Spy projecting May's voice. Hey, Dr. Jekyll. Stay away from my pal in the pod. May. Don't be a hero. Red Alert warned. Flatline grumbled, clutching his hand in ire. Dumbcoffs. Human interlopers, allow me to show you what happens when idiots get in my way. His hand transformed into an extremely sharp circular saw, which was spinning the moment it came out of his arm. But, as he raised it to slice the Sky Spy to pieces, another ground bridge suddenly opened up in front of him, taking him aback. What Z? Crash. From out of the portal, Tetsu came charging and leapt up right into Flatline's midsection, the metallized young man bowling him over with little effort. Take that, ya freaky surgeon, he said as he slid into a landing. No one's gonna be taking that pod while we're around. What? A human. Flatline narrowed his optics as the teenager, clambering onto his feet. You have made a grave mistake coming here. But then, from under his legs, yet another human came dashing in front of him, a young female with green hair. Another. Yeah, that's right, Decepti jerk. Setsuna jumped up and down, waving her arms in an attempt to make herself into as much of a nuisance as possible. Why don't ya try seeing what that little saw of yours does to me, The Decepticon medic raised his hand to the side, bringing it in from Setsuna's left. Perhaps I will, thank you very much. He brought his weapon in, and successfully sliced through Setsuna at the waist, the two halves of her body falling down to the ground. Yes, wait, aren't you fleshbags supposed to be messier than you? Yeah. Stumbling back while giving the most high-pitched scream imaginable, Flatline stared with wide optics as Setsuna's two halves both got up, with her legs remaining land-bound while her upper torso floated up in the air. The lizard tail splitter user wore a smirk as she flew right into Flatline's face, spooking him more. Made ya scream. Tetsu. Red Alert shouted. Sestuna, what are you? Sorry, Red, but you need help whether ya wanna admit it or not. Tetsu replied with a serious scowl. Feel free to punish us later, but right now, you're stuck and we're the only ones who can help. He heard Red Alert eventually give an acknowledging grumble, which Tetsu took as the closest sign of approval he'd be getting. Flatline, meanwhile, was still trying to get away as Setsuna stayed within inches of him, keeping her Cheshire grin. Stay back. Stay away, I tell you, Just then, he felt something begin wrapping around his hands, and his legs, and his whole body. He snapped his head down to see thousands upon thousands of thorny vines encircling him, and directly next to his leg, he found the plant's perpetrator. "Apologies, doctor, but I'm afraid this house call must be put on hold." Abara quipped with a cold stare. "Nice one, Abara. I'll take it from here." At yet another female voice, Flatline turned his head, right into a pair of massive human hands smacking him across the face, before both came in and slammed him on either side of his head. Now thoroughly disoriented, Flatline wobbled around and fell straight to the dessert floor, where Itsuka landed with her big fists raised. "Ha ha. Victory. Yes, though I hope you realize just how lucky that victory was." Red Alert noted, the medic beginning to regain his composure as his cooling systems were slowly repaired. "Now keep an eye out, we still have Seekers inbound." Crush. The 1B students gasped and collectively brought their heads up, where they saw Skywarp and Flare-Up come crashing down on top of a nearby rock formation. The impact was strong enough to shake the entire area, which managed to spook the nearby peregrine falcon away from its nest with a fearful shriek. "Gah, sorry, birdie, ack." Flare-Up's apology was cut off when Skywarp clutched her by the neck, raising her up as she kicked and flailed in an attempt to escape. Itsuka was understandably not happy to see that. "No, let her go, you big bully." Oh, I'll let her go alright." Skywarp snickered nefariously, keeping one of his shotguns aimed at Flare-Up's chest. "Just as soon as you hand over that pod." There were a few tense moments of hesitation, the teens looking to one another for answers but finding none. Don't do it, kids." Flare-Up advised. "I'll be fine. What matters is getting that pod outta, That's enough outta you. If you kids are smart, you'll do what I say." Skywarp bellowed. What do we do?" Tetsu ran his hands through his hair, struggling to find a solution. I'm not sure," Itsuka admitted, keeping her eyes locked on Flare-Up in concern. We need to," but, right at that moment, the pod chimed in. "Compatible DNA found. Beginning scanning sequence." Everyone's attention snapped right to the pod as its scanner began projecting a pair of large, golden beams of light that began trailing over the whole area. The humans shielded their eyes as the light washed over them and the Cybertronians, but then, they heard another shriek from above. Their sights went up and saw the falcon flying in circles above their heads, though it stopped in midair as the light came over it as well. Inside the pod, meanwhile, the protoform was beginning to take shape, as its sparks started to beat faster and faster. "No." Skywarp aimed his shotgun at the pod. "If we can't have it, then nobody can." Eric. Everyone was forced to cover their ears and audio processors as an absolutely deafening shriek came from the pod, the inside shining brightly before the new transformer practically shot itself into the air, surrounded by light and obscuring its appearance. The group were left collectively stunned by what just happened. "Okay, what the hell was that?" Tetsu exclaimed. "WHRR, TSCHZZ TSCHZZ, TSCHZZ, CHKT. Everyone's attention was brought to Red Alert, who was able to finally, if slowly, transform himself back into robot mode. All the same, he immediately fell to one knee, tired out from just transforming. That was proving my suspicions correct. Skywarp moved his aim down to the medic. "What suspicions? Tell me what?" Yark. Another sharp, metallic screech suddenly came blasting in Skywarp's ear, and then he felt something grab onto his shoulders and swiftly pull him up into the air. With a pained yelp, the black and purple seeker was left stunned when he saw a pair of massive talons digging into his shoulder joints, piercing through his armor and inner circuitry. And then, he craned his head up, as did everyone else, and what they saw made their jaws drop. It was a bird. A giant, metal bird. One whose feathers and body were the color of bronze and tannish brown, with silver detailing all throughout and with hints of gold in its talons and beak. Its eyes glowed a vibrant green as it hoisted Skywarp up, forcing him to let go of Flare-Up. Hey, let go of me, you oversized cyber turkey. The metal falcon screeched in response and immediately dove down toward the ground, or more specifically, the fight going on between Safeguard and Thundercracker. Hey, wait, don't do, whoa. What the, crash. The Seeker brothers collided forcibly and were sent clattering to the ground, all while Safeguard did a double take at what happened. Perhaps we should retreat and let them handle things. On that note, the street action team separated and transformed, driving back to where the others were. Gah. Skywarp, get off. Thundercracker kicked his brother off of him and did a kip up to his peds, spinning around to try and find the massive bird. Where the pit did that thing come from? With an angered growl, Skywarp cocked his shotguns, charging them up. Grr, it was in the pod. We're too late. Thundercracker deadpanned at that. Oh, fantastic. Starscream's gonna love hearing that. Then, out the corner of his optic, he saw the metal bird of prey come swooping back toward them once again. There. It's coming in hot. The brothers pointed their respective weapons at it as Thundercracker hollered, "Halt. You're not going anywhere." At the bottom of its stoop, the metal bird made a sudden pull up, flapping in place as it narrowed its optics at the duo. And then, it spoke in a feminine voice, accompanied by a distinct, Egyptian accent. Arizer, maximize. With another loud shriek, the metal bird began to transform, right as the Autobots and humans arrived on the scene. The Falcon's head pulled a 180-degree spin before it and its wings both flipped forward, the head tucking in on the bird belly to form the robot mode chest. The wings, meanwhile, collapsed in on themselves and became a pair of slender robot mode legs, with two-toed feet folding out from each wingtip. The Falcon's legs, meanwhile, moved out and transformed into a pair of arms, the talons moving to the forearms as a pair of hands emerged and a pair of feathered shoulder pads flared out. The tail feathers of the Falcon then folded onto the back of the robot as a new pair of robot mode wings came popping out of the back, along with a set of jet thrusters that kept her aloft. Finally, the robot mode head shifted out from the torso. The helm in and of itself was rather bird-like in design, sleek and sharp with feather-like details along the sides. There was also a prominent beak-shaped visor on the front that covered the femme's optics, but kept her slim, silvery face exposed. The Autobots and humans could only marvel at the transformation they just witnessed as Red Alert chuckled. Hey, yep, she's a Maximal. Arizer blasted forward with astonishing speed, slamming both Seekers in their chests and sending Thundercracker back into the ground. He was hit so hard that his body made a large rut as it skid across the ground. Meanwhile, Arizer pulled Skywarp back up into the air, where both got into a brief tussle before separating. With an enraged yell, Skywarp transformed into jet mode and began blasting at Arizer with intense laser fire, only to find that the Maximal was quite adept at dodging them all. In response, she reached to her sides and produced a pair of blades before flying straight at him, and when Skywarp went to barrel roll away, she sliced clean through one of his wings. GGH. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. Skywarp managed to transform again before hitting the ground, taking out his shotguns and shooting at Arizer immediately. You think this can take me out? I'll fragging kill you, Maximal. PFF'd, pitiful. Arizer scoffed as she kept bobbing and weaving with the greatest of ease. You are nothing but a spite-filled excuse for a bot, and for that, you must be punished. With a graceful turn and twirl in midair, Arizer flew up and then flexed her arms and legs, which resulted in a whole bunch of rocket launchers popping out of her limbs and body. Skywarp barely had time to gawk at what he just saw, before she unleashed them all at once, her voice echoing as she proclaimed. Justice reigns from above. Not today, Skywarp said as he teleported away from the missiles and reappeared a few feet away, but then they immediately changed course, much to his dismay. Heat Seekers. Oh, scrap. Ag. Boom 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 boom. The rocket assault was merciless as multiple explosions engulfed Skywarp entirely, leaving everyone stunned. Thundercracker, Barricade and Flatline, the latter two having just recovered, were left slack-jawed when the smoke and dust finally cleared, and revealed a very dismembered Skywarp laying upon the ground in almost too many pieces to count. His head was still attached to his torso, but even then, that wasn't the most shocking part, that being that he was still alive. Og. Yeah. Primus. The three still standing Decepticons slowly tracked their optics back over to Arizer, who was now hovering in the air directly before them. They saw that the empty rocket launchers on her body were starting to replenish themselves, and even with her own optics obscured, they could tell that she was glaring at them. Would anyone else like to try me? Neen, ma'am. Flatline assured as he and the others zipped right over to Skywarp, they along with the Minicons working to quickly pick up the pieces of their suffering teammate. Vive will be taking our leave, thank you. You'd better. Otherwise, I will track you down and reduce you to scrap as well. Arizer snarled. Now leave. The group of evil-doer bots screamed and Flatline hastily called for a ground bridge, wherein they all disappeared one by one with the mutilated Skywarp. I won't forget this, bird bot. You hear me? Skywarp's rambling was cut off as the ground bridge closed, leading Arizer to sigh in relief. Lowering herself down to the ground, she flew closer to the gathered humans and Autobots, landing in the soft sand with astounding elegance. Startlingly as well, she was fairly tall, almost Red Alert's height in robot mode. Then, to everyone's further surprise, her visor made a hissing noise as it shifted up and onto her forehead, revealing her green optics for everyone to see. Is everyone alright here? No injuries? Flare-Up rotated her shoulder struts with a short groan. Nothing that can't be fixed, love. We owe you one, though. You saved us all back there. Yeah, you were amazing. Setsuna bounced enthusiastically, bringing Arizer's sights down to her. I knew Transformers could become awesome vehicles and stuff, but I had no idea that they could become animals, too. Itsuka nodded as well. No kidding. No matter how many new things we learn about you Cybertronians, you just keep on amazing us. She extended her hand up to the bird bot. You said your name was Arizer, right? It's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to Earth. Earth. Arizer scanned her optics across the area, noting the natural wonder of the planet around her. It almost seemed familiar in a way. So that is the name of this planet. With a smile upon her lips, she knelt down and took hold of Itsuka's hand. But indeed, I am Arizer. It is a pleasure to meet you all. But then, she noticed the blue legs of the Autobot medic, which garnered her attention back up to meet his visored gaze. After a moment's hesitation, she spoke up again. You are, Red Alert. The medic was left quite astonished by that. How do you know? I am not sure, but I believe I owe you my life. Red Alert couldn't help but smile at that. Let's say we're even. So Air, can I call you Air? Flare-Up asked as she zipped up next to the Maximal with a slight head tilt. I don't think I recognize ya from Cybertron, you from one of the colony planets. And, how'd your pod get Air in the first place? Her questions made Arizer's metal brow furrow, her hand going up to her head as she tried to search her memory, only to come up with nothing. Cybertron, colony planet. I'm sorry, but I cannot seem to remember anything. Your memory circuits might have been affected by your POD's condition. Red Alert informed regrettably. Your pod sustained significant damage upon re-entry. It's honestly a miracle that we were able to get you online in the first place. Suddenly, the Sky Spy came rocketing over Red Alert's head and flew right up to Arizer, who pulled her head back in shock. Aha. Well, luckily for you, me and my friends just so happened to be experts in helping bots recover their memories. May declared proudly. Come back to base and we'll see about helping you out with that. Arizer blinked confusedly, but nonetheless was grateful for the help. Oh, thank you, strange floating machine. At that very moment, a ground bridge opened up only a few feet from the group, which made Arizer's optics widen further in wonder. Oh, wow. Haha. Oh man, wait until the Autobots get back and hear about this. Tetsu cheered as he, his classmates and the Minicons strolled through the portal, with the Sky Spy following after. Come on, Arizer, we'll give ya a tour of the base. The Maximal was hesitant, but a supportive grin and wink from Flare-Up helped bolster her confidence. Come on, love, the team's gonna love ya. Slowly but surely, Arizer returned the smile and followed Flare-Up to the portal, leaving Red Alert to take up the rear. The medic kept his own smile, thankful that everything worked out in the end. When a spark goes online, there's great joy. His words didn't go unnoticed by Flare-Up, who while surprised, simply kept smiling at their victory, as well as their new friend. Chapter 46, Planning Ahead. Failure. That was Starscream's word of the day ever since the team he sent out came back empty-handed. No stasis pod, no Autobot sparks to their names, nothing. Absolutely nothing, aside from the dismembered, and yet somehow still living, body of his elder brother. Said brother was busy being operated on by Flatline as they, along with Nitra, Barricade and Thundercracker, were being reprimanded by the Seeker commander in the medical bay of the Darkside. On a nearby slab, Blastwave was laid out, still in deep stasis, while Swift stood by with her arms crossed watching the tirade go down. Shadow Striker was also present, but she was leaning against a wall with an indifferent expression about her as she worked on her rifle. Failure. Nothing but failure, 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 BWAH ha ha ha. The Decepticons watched as Starscream draped himself across an empty slab as he sobbed in defeat, leading Swift to step in and say, "Sue, failure. Failure." Starscream snapped up, glaring at his underlings with disdain. And it's been happening far, far too often. Swift shrugged. Can't argue with you on that one. Could you please take this seriously? One mission. Can we accomplish one single mission without something going absolutely wrong? Starscream whipped around on barricade first, with Frenzy cowering behind his leg. You had the nerve to complain when you got there and then both of you were dispatched easily by that zippy annoyance. He thrust a finger toward his brother next. And you didn't provide Skywarp and Flatline the necessary backup, too busy dealing with Minicons. Thundercracker raised a finger. A Minicon combiner, to be fair. Don't care. Starscream batted his younger brother across the chest, making him stumble back. Your mission first and foremost was the pod, not to concern yourself with Minicons. Hey! Runway shouted, her, Jetstorm and Sonar quickly getting in front of their wielder. Don't you treat Thundercracker like that. Starscream scowled down to the trio. Do not get in my way. He reeled his leg back to kick all of them away, but Thundercracker dove in at the last second, taking the hit for them. While the Minicons were left stunned, Starscream was a bit disgusted by it. Oh, so that's it, You have a soft spot for these puny whelps. Heaving heavily, Thundercracker glowered up to his older brother. They're an essential part of this team. They're a sword. Nothing more. Starscream discarded the topic and moved on, though he failed to see the air assault team try to attack him from behind. They were stopped by a desperate Thundercracker, who quickly took them all out of the room. Starscream spared them a brief glance before scoffing and zeroing in on Nitra, who seemed utterly disinterested. And then, there's you. Nitra shifted her gaze up from her hollow screen as she scrolled through it. Sabes K. How on Cybertron did I get saddled with the poorest excuse of a hacker in the Decepticon ranks? Starscream swiped his hand through the hollow screen, disabling it. You are by far the most insubordinate member on this ship. But the Magenta Con raised her hands in defense. Hey, you know what? You're right. I'll own up to it, I've got very little respect for you, Starscream. She jerked a thumb over to the now unconscious Skywarp. In fact, I've got more respect for that pendejo on the slab. And, you wanna know why? Because he earned it. You, though. PSH, for being the second in command of the Decepticons, you're probably the whiniest bot on the ship. I am not whiny. Starscream stomped. Shadow Striker sneered at the notion. PSH, says Z-Bot who was throwing a tantrum about failure only a few moments ago. She raised an eyerage to the Air Commander. And even I will admit, I also have more respect for Skywarp than you. Nitra thrust an arm out to her teammate. See, Shadow gets it. Starscream's eye twitched in disbelief. This is absurd. I am the leader of the Seekers. How does my brother have more respect than I? Well, his plans actually work, for one. Shadow Striker explained, holstering her rifle behind her back. While our last intended target was not killed like we had hoped, we still successfully infiltrated an Autobot base on a distant planet and stole vital plans for Zir War mechs. She craned her head toward the black and purple Seeker. In all honesty, I fail to understand why Megatron didn't make him second in command in Z first place. At this point, the twitch spread from Starscream's eye to his whole face as the sniper went on. Did his elder brother really hold more respect among the Decepticon army than even he? I don't have to take this insubordination. Thankfully, my original crew are all exceptionally loyal to me. Isn't that right, Swift? His head whipped around to see Swift, scrolling through a data pad for intergalactic news articles. Her optics shifted up as she noticed him. Oh, sorry, wasn't paying attention, what was that? The Seeker was about to yell his head off at her again, but then, something cut him off. A mighty groan coming from a certain occupied slab. It was Blastwave, the massive Decepticon finally online after several days in stasis. Bah, OGH, oh, good morning to you, he slurred in a very groggy voice. Has the Tooth Fairy come to visit yet? Blastwave, you're back, Flatline exclaimed, pausing his work on Skywarp to check on his friend. Und you, wait, Vought. Hee, it was long trip, but Blastwave has returned. The Decepticon bruiser held a single finger up in the air for emphasis, much to everyone's confusion. Is he okay? Nitra asked. Flatline groaned and facepalmed. It's as I feared, I had a feeling that his processor would be a bit laggy upon his reawakening. He turned toward the other Decepticons with his hands raised. Everyone, do not say or do anything that could provoke him. They do not know what he could do in Z's state. Swift tilted her head. Come on, how bad could he be? Just then, however, Blastwave shot up to his feet and raised his hands into the air, proclaiming, Blastwave is prettiest princess. The cons all stepped back in shock, gawking at the behemoth. Blastwave is fairy tale, come to life. Ooh, that bad, Swift muttered. Blastwave outstretched his arms, beckoning the others to approach him. Come, my friends, come closer. He somehow managed to grab Barricade, much to the officer's shock, and brought him up to optic level. Listen, Blastwave is little pixie person. He will not crush you. I find that very hard to believe, ow. And just like that, Barricade was tossed to the side, sailing straight over Skywarp's operating table. Frenzy was absolutely not having that, though. Hey, you back offa, Barricade ya big galoot, wah. But he was cut off when Blastwave scooped him into his massive hat, bringing him to optic level. Blastwave is wish-making fairy. Make wish. I wish to be let go. As if on cue, Blastwave tossed Frenzy into Barricade, hitting the cop right in the head. Bahahaha. Wish granted. As the others watched this chaos go down, Starscream suddenly got a very insidious idea in his processor. In this influential state, Blastwave can be persuaded into saying anything. I wonder, he cleared his vocal processors and approached the dazed munitions specialist from behind. Ahem, Blastwave, we've known each other for such a long time now, correct? Well, we've been having a bit of a debate as to who respects whom more on this ship. His optics were hopeful as he asked, and of course, I know that you respect me the most, don't you? Not that I need to ask, but, clang. Without any warning whatsoever, Blastwave swung himself around and clocked Starscream upside the head as hard as he could, bringing him down to the floor in an unconscious heap. Don't you lecture me with your $30 haircut. From out of nowhere, Blastwave took out a set of red goggles, slapped them over his optics, and started singing. Can't stop, addicted to the shindig. He squatted down over Starscream's comatose body and flexed his massive hands. Chop top, he says I'm gonna win big, choose not the life of imitation, distant cousin to the reservation. Blastwave whipped around, took up one of Skywarp's guns and shot it, making everyone duck. Defunct, the pistol that you paid for, this punk, the feeling that you stay for. He approached Skywarp on his operating table, going straight for his head. In time, I want to be your best friend, Eastside love is living on the West End. HRK. Blastwave, no. The Decepticons were all horrified as Blastwave tried to insert Skywarp's whole head into his mouth, with Flatline being the first to try and stop him. Do not eat him. Oh Primus, someone sedate this motherfragger. Swift, Nitra and Shadow Striker immediately tried to help, all without knowing that they were being watched from the outside. Unicronus could only watch, mouth agape, at the scene before him. Barricade, Frenzy and Starscream were all reduced to being heaps on the floor and their strongest warrior was trying to eat the only other competent soldier on the ship while the Fems and Doctor were holding him back. The Decepticon general sighed and ran a hand down his face, trying to curb his frustration. Truly, I am surrounded by imbeciles. He began strolling down the hall again, trying to desperately delete that memory. Incompetent fools, maybe it's time I take matters into my own hands. A smirk came to his features, his metallic teeth shining through the darkness surrounding him as much as his red visor did. And maybe I should also give Megatron a call sometime soon. If Starscream screws up even once more, that's that for him. Back in Japan, the ground bridge had just been opened at Autobot headquarters, and thankfully, the gang were on their way home. Their comlinked connection had been re-established, thankfully, so everyone was eager to get back home, especially when they were told by May to expect a surprise. Needless to say, everyone's curiosity had been piqued. Once every Autobot had rolled in, they opened their doors to allow their human companions to disembark before transforming into robot mode, only to find no one there but May. What's going on? Sideswipe piped up first. Yeah, where is everybody? Sunstreaker echoed, scratching his helm. May, nonplussed, simply waved them over. Hiya, everybody. So, any luck? Well, we didn't find Grimlock, but we found a ton of energon. Kiyoka informed, still glancing around the place to see if there was anyone else there. But Hatsume, where's everyone else? Eijiro wore a concerned expression. You didn't make him disappear, did you? Spiky hair, I'm insulted that you'd assume something like that. May said with a feigned gasp. Do you really think I'd go so far as to make my own teammates disappear for my own experiments? The mad inventor received several deadpan stares in response. Okay, maybe I would, but not this time. Alright, so where are Red Alert and the others? Momo questioned. Red's finishing patching himself up after the impromptu mission and the rest are outside waitin' for ya. That's when Optimus Iriges furrowed in confusion. Impromptu mission. May, what are you? There you all are. Everyone turned their heads to the nearby hallway and saw Red Alert strolling toward them, and he seemed in an actually cheery mood, which left some disconcerted. I'm glad you were able to make it back safe and sound. When we lost contact with you, I was deeply concerned. Red, you seem to be in a good mood. Windblade pointed out. Springer put his fists to his hips, raising a suspicious brow. Yeah, what's going on around here, Doc? Optimus stepped directly toward the medic, also very curious. I admit, I must echo their sentiments, old friend. May mentioned something about an unplanned mission. Red Alert simply chuckled, ushering for the Autobots to follow him and May outside. HM, don't worry, Optimus, everything will be made clear very shortly. Come on, it's easier to show you what we mean than tell you. The Autobots and 1A students, still as perplexed as ever, followed the pair outside into the field, where they saw Flare Up, the Minicons, and the 1B students all hanging out. Everyone, they've returned. The smaller group perked up when they heard that. Smashing. Flare Up zipped right over to them with her cheery grin. Glad to see you're all back safe and sound. The teens and Minicons were right behind her as they met their own schoolmates. Yeah, I was wondering how you guys have been doing. Itsuka nodded, tilting her head. Any idea what that whole thing was with the signal cutting out? Izuku rubbed the back of his head with a grimace. Well, about that. We were actually talking about that while we were stuck there and, one look at the group, and the 1B students could see that everyone was visibly worried. We're thinking that the Decepticons might have a hacker amongst their ranks. Whoa, seriously, Tetsu uttered. That actually makes a lot of sense. Setsuna tapped her chin. Gotta have someone who's good with technology if you wanna mess with technology. The green-haired girl shrugged. And if you are technology for that matter. Yes, but we're still trying to figure out why a Decepticon hacker targeted our comm links. RC spoke up, crossing her arms with a grimace of her own. I mean, if they didn't want us to contact base, then fine, but why? Abara cleared her throat to interject. I think it's more along the lines of them not wanting us to contact you all. This brought the Autobots' attention straight to her as the Vine user looked to her companions. No doubt the Decepticons wanted to make sure that we didn't have reinforcements so that they'd have little trouble in seizing the pod for themselves. Jazz raised his hands, trying to backpedal everything. Whoa, hold up. Back up a bit, did you say, pod? Optimus leaned forward intently. As in, a stasis pod. A stasis pod, Mina voiced. You mean those big spheres you all came to Earth in? Exactly, but this sounds different. Bulkhead said as the situation finally began to make sense to him. If the Decepticons were trying to get to it, it was probably a protoform stasis pod that landed, which meant the bot inside would be susceptible to reprogramming. And that would mean, Strongarm gasped and whipped her head toward Red Alert and Flare Up. Were you able to retrieve it? She narrowed her optics to the smiling duo. Is that why Red Alert is acting almost as happy as you, Flare Up? At that, Red Alert quickly wiped his grin off and reapplied his stoic facade. Ahem, let's not get hasty. But yes, we were able to retrieve the pod, though unfortunately, it was also damaged severely upon re-entry. There was a round of collective gasps as the medic continued. The protoform inside was alive, but the Decepticons were able to intercept us. The battle was fierce, and we nearly lost the protoform. Flare-up continued. That sent a chill through everyone, but they also couldn't help but notice the way both of them were speaking. So, if you guys were able to retrieve it, where's the Autobot? Well, that's the thing, it wasn't an Autobot. Flare-up's reply took everyone aback, with Momo almost shouting, you mean it was a Decepti? Yeah, Eric. The away team, Autobots and humans alike, all flinched at the sudden, ear-piercing shriek that came right from out of nowhere. The teens even covered their ears just from the sheer volume of it, though they couldn't see where it originated from. What the hell was that? Kiyoka screamed. Springer, ever vigilant, reached for his swords and ejected his Minicons, Sawback and Fangblade both bristling as they stood on guard. Are we under attack? What is this? Ha ha ha. Everybody, chill. Flare-up laughed, along with the 1B students. Everything's fine, I assure you. She pointed a finger up toward the sky, giving the team a wink, all while the sound of cacophonous wingbeats seemed to close in on them. It's like I said, the protoform inside the pod wasn't an Autobot. She spread her arms out and held them high over her head, announcing to the heavens, it was a Maximal. Yeah, Eric. As if on cue, the team were treated to an absolutely jaw-dropping sight. The light of the afternoon sun was briefly cut out above them as a massive shadow flew straight over them, one that was cast by a giant, metal, avian creature. The Autobots were surprised, to be sure, but it was more of a pleasant surprise. The teenagers, though. Bird. Denki yelled. Giant bird. Eijiro's hands flew up to his head. Vast, predatory bird. Tenya shouted as he chopped the air in front of him toward the avian. As the metal falcon screeched and circled back around so that it was directly in front of them, the team were able to get a better look at this massive animal. Its metal hide was a deep bronze, and all throughout its body, mainly on its head, back and wings, there were some organic-looking feathers sticking out of it in addition to its more solid, metal feathers. Though, upon closer inspection, they would find that these feathers were also metal as well, just very fine and more malleable. The falcon dove down straight toward the group, making the 118s back away in apprehension as it stopped in mid-flight and flapped its wings to stay aloft in one place. And then, Arizer, maximize. With another shriek, the giant bird transformed in the air, doing a flip as her parts rearranged before landing on the ground, as a tall, slender fembot. She seemed a lot more primal than the standard Autobots, more armored in certain places with visible battle damage strewn about across her form. She was about as tall as Red Alert, and her beak-like visor covered her optics until she shifted it up onto her forehead. Then, in one last show of display, a set of robot mode wings popped out of her back, all while she put on a rather self-assured grin and placed her hands on her hips. So, how was that for an entrance, She spoke in a clear, Egyptian accent. Needless to say, the teenagers were left completely silent by her showmanship, while the Autobots were amazed by her presence. I don't, what? Kiyoka cried out. Ha ha ha, you've gotta be kiddin' me. Bulkhead guffawed, putting a hand to his forehead. A Maximal. Here. Springer resheathed his swords into his back, intrigued by Arizer as well. Yeah, quite the rare sight, he raised an Irigen suspicion. How in Primus' name did you get here? Arizer chuckled and gave a shrug. Hey, I'd certainly like to know that myself. The damage to my pod extended to my memory core. I can barely remember a thing before I got into my pod. The second she said that, she saw the little yellow bot's eyes widen, and he jogged up to her eagerly. ZRKT, you're just like me. He proclaimed. It didn't take long for her to realize, oh. So you must be this, Bumblebee, that the others mentioned to me. Arizer knelt down and placed a hand over her chest. Well, it's certainly a pleasure to meet you. My name is Arizer. As the two shook hands, the 118s were just staring in silence, still taken aback. Every time I feel like I've figured Transformers out, they just keep on surprising me. Eijiro murmured. Yeah, I mean, they can turn into animals, too. Denki emphasized. Only certain members of the Cybertronian race can do so. Optimus explained, gesturing toward Arizer. As Flare-Up stated, she is a Maximal. They are a special subgroup of Cybertronians who exclusively transform into beast modes. Still, the Autobot leader couldn't help but be intrigued by Arizer, more specifically her somewhat more organic appearance. Though I must admit, I haven't seen a Maximal such as her anywhere on Cybertron. He took the opportunity to walk up to her himself, extending a hand down to her. Pardon me, Arizer, correct. My name is Optimus Prime. Arizer brought her green optics up to meet Prime's, standing at full height to accept his handshake. Ah, yes, the others told me about you as well. It's truly an honor to meet you, sir. Likewise. Tell me, you said that you have no memories of your past life, correct? The Maximal knocked a finger against her helm. Pretty much. Woke up, reduced some bot to scrap, couldn't remember a thing. Bumblebee did a double take. ZRKT, hold on, ZRKT, what you mean? Oh, yes, I meant to tell you. Red Alert chortled. We won't be having to worry about Skywarp for a while. Hee, they'll be salvaging him for days. Arizer held her head up high, feeling rather proud of herself. MMHM. Exactly. That Seeker was threatening their lives, so I stepped in and rained justice down upon him. I let him live, though, as a warning not to cross me again. She saw Prime raised an eyelid, but decided to ask about that later. Anyways, I was told that someone here could perhaps assist me with regaining my lost memories. Someone called a city speaker. Right here. Windblade was taken off guard by the sudden mention, but nevertheless, she raised her hand and walked toward the front of the team. She met with Arizer directly and offered her hand. My name's Windblade, and I'm the city speaker. The bird bot's optics lit up excitedly. Oh, a fellow flyer, I see. She shook Windblade's hand heartily. It's a pleasure to meet you, Windblade. I hope you can help me regain my lost memories. That is, if it is at all possible, I would greatly appreciate it. Windblade had to admit, she wasn't expecting the boisterous femme to also be so formal. Well, better than being completely arrogant, that's for sure. She smiled up at the Maximal and nodded reassuringly. Well, I've never exercised my technique on a Maximal before, but I'll definitely give it my best. If there's any hope in recovering your memories, I'll help you out, Arizer. But before I do, I have to ask, is there anything that you can remember? Even vaguely. HMPH, not much, I'm afraid. Arizer set a hand to her helm, scrunching her features as she tried to recall anything. The most I can remember are, a lush, jungle world, a certain face, and a giant mouth. That last one managed to make everyone do a double take. Does the giant mouth belong to that face? Oh, no, not in the least. Arizer pointed up. The giant mouth was coming out of the sky. The face belongs to someone else. Her optics narrowed as she tried to recall, all while everyone stared at her incredulously. For some reason, the colors white, black and teal come to mind, but aside from that, it's hard to think about. I see. Windblade tapped her chin, pondering on everything she was just told. Sounds to me like you're not from Cybertron at all, but possibly from another colony planet. We'll have to do more digging to find out for sure, but don't worry, I'll make sure to help you as best as I can. Arizer bowed respectfully to the city speaker. Thank you so much. I'm forever grateful for your help. In return, I shall do the best I can to help all of you out as well. Her attention went back to Optimus, standing straight at attention. I heard that you are in a war with these Decepticons, and it would be an honor to offer you my services, sir. Optimus tilted his head. You're willing to enter a war you barely know anything about. The Maximal gestured down to the 1B students and the Minicons, as well as Flare-Up and Red Alert. Everyone here has given me the gist of what your conflict has been like over the course of this war, and quite frankly, it makes me sick to think of what this, Megatron, has done to your planet. Arizer gave the Prime a salute. Consider me on board. Beneath his faceplate, Optimus Prime grinned as he saluted her back with a chuckle. HMHM, very well then. Welcome to the Autobots, Arizer. It is my pleasure, sir. Arizer craned her head around to the other Autobots with a sheepish expression. Though to be truthful, I'm still not entirely certain what to make of all this. My scattered memories aside, this may possibly be my first experience working with a team. If you're smart, you'll make tracks. Sideswipe said with a wink and a jerk of his thumb. So, has anyone shown ya around yet? I'd be happy to offer my services, hee. Sunstreaker rolled his optics at his brother's bad attempt at flirting and gave Sideswipe a light shove. Pay no attention to my brother. He was born with a major glitch. I'll show you a major glitch. Gah. Sideswipe practically pounced on Sunstreaker and both of them began rolling across the ground, the latter brother crying about his paint job as they tumbled down a nearby hill. The others watched in completely stunned silence, aside from Strongarm, who pointed out, you know, it's odd that I'm not the one fighting Sideswipe this time. A rare sight indeed. Kiyoka agreed before making a slow approach to Arizer, the bird bot watching the twins brawl in confusion. Hey, you'll get used to everything. Including them, maybe. Oh, hello. Arizer knelt down, getting closer to the punk rocker as the rest of the 1A students came over as well. You all must be the other humans that your friends mentioned. Exactly. Kiyoka placed a hand over her chest. I'm Kiyoka Jiro, and these are my friends. Izuku bowed his head in greeting. Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Arizer. From there, the others introduced themselves in kind and, once they were all done, Arizer couldn't help but give a little laugh. Haha, my word, for being on this planet in secret, there are certainly quite a few locals that know about us. Oh, there's a lot more. Eijiro piped up. Our teachers, some of the top heroes in Japan, a government agency, and maybe a group of terrorists. By the creator. Arizer breathed out. That is certainly quite the lineup. She craned her head toward Optimus Prime curiously. Tell me, how has our secret not been discovered yet? Thankfully, nearly every one of our allies have sworn to keep our presence on Earth a secret. Optimus informed. And as for that group of terrorists known as Mech, they also seem rather secretive themselves, so I doubt that they will make our presences known to the public. The winged Maximal hummed at that. I see. Well, in regards to keeping secret, I feel I must apologize. Arizer scratched the back of her head awkwardly. I'm afraid my beast mode doesn't exactly constitute much of a disguise, if I'm being frank, hee. Optimus shook his head. Don't worry, Arizer. Whether you are capable of disguise or not, I'm sure that you'll still find your own place within the team. He raised a hand up to the warehouse. And of course, be sure to make yourself at home here. Let this be your, roost. Clever wordplay, sir. Arizer complimented with a smirk. I'll do just that. Speaking of your alt mode, Mina poked her fingers together with an excited grin. Do you think you could, maybe, transform again? Her question was one that Arizer wasn't expecting, but it seemed as if the humans were all just as eager to see that as Mina was. And not that I wanna force you to transform for our own amusement, but we've just never seen a transformer with a beast mode before, and it's utterly fascinating. Momo interjected. Mina nodded rapidly. Yeah, what she said. So, please. Arizer chuckled and rose to her full height, finding their intrigue rather adorable. Well, how can I refuse after you all asked so nicely? Everyone stand back, I'm gonna need some room. The 1A student stepped away from the bird lady as she stretched her limbs and loosened herself up in preparation. Alright, beast mode. With a jump up into the air, Arizer performed a somersault and transformed, her hands becoming feet while her legs extended out into her bird wings. The falcon head on her chest rotated into position, finishing her transformation before she landed back down on the ground with another shrill cry, fanning her wings out for show. Ayah Eric. The teens were left in awe at the massive bird of prey before them, to say the least. Ha, whoa. Eijiro laughed, pumping a fist into the air. That is so freaking cool. No kiddin'. You guys should have been there when she first transformed. Tetsu raised his hands and started swiping at the air. She was all like, shink, and then she was like, whoosh. He flexed his arms to his sides while everyone watched with awkward smiles. And then she was like, justice reigns from above. And it was all like, doom 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 doom. Breathing hard this point, Tetsu wrapped it up, saying, and yeah, Skywarp was just left in pieces by the end of that. Right, Arizer. I suppose so. The bird bot replied, folding her wings in and rubbing her face bashfully with them. Though I don't know if I would have described it like that. Well, either way, it's freaking awesome. Denki exclaimed, thrusting his hands up to her. I mean, you're a giant bird. If there's more Maximals like you out in the universe, I'm dying to see what else they can turn into. Tenya raised her hand to speak his mind. A question, though, if I may. He saw Arizer give him a nod, prompting him to go on. I couldn't help but notice that you used a code word before you transformed each time. Are the phrases, maximize, and, beast mode, necessary before transformation for your kind? Oh, no, they are not. Arizer denied. They are more, battle cries. Her optics squinted when she recalled that, though she wasn't sure why it made her confused. Although, I am unable to remember the origin of the battle cry itself. It is strange. Windblade stepped forward and held a hand up to the metal falcon. Don't strain yourself, Arizer. I'll help you try and uncover some of your memories, but doing so now before the procedure could cause processor strain. With a short sigh, Arizer shook her head, getting herself back on track. HMPH, very well, Windblade. I will trust your judgment there. For now, though, I believe I should do what Optimus Prime advised, and make my roost. Extending her wings out yet again, Arizer took herself aloft and flew straight up to the roof of the warehouse, perching up on top and surveying the area. Her sights went out toward the sea, and she smiled at the incredible view of the sun close to setting over the horizon. I must say, I think I'll enjoy staying at this place. As the others watched down below, Izuku couldn't help but muse to himself the fact that they now had even more team members now. Wow, our team just keeps getting bigger and bigger. He turned to Kiyoka, the two sharing a grin. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Yeah, though at this pace, the team's liable to quickly outgrow this base. Kiyoka raised a brow over to the resident rich girl. Yo, Momo. You sure your parents don't own any other kinda abandoned place that's bigger? Unfortunately, not to my knowledge. Momo replied apologetically. All of father's larger factories are all operable at the moment, and if he does have any bigger spaces that aren't in use, he keeps them fairly close to the chest in case of emergencies. She raised a hand, gesturing toward the Autobots. And outside of telling him about them, I doubt that we'll be seeing any sort of base expansion anytime soon. She folded her arms across her chest with a wince. And letting him know about the robots who've been living in his warehouse for almost 3 months now doesn't exactly sound like the best idea. Optimus wasn't too bothered by it, though. It's all right, Momo. I appreciate your thoughtfulness regardless, but we will manage to figure out our base situation should the time come. But for now, the Autobot leader moved his attention back to the punk rocker. Kiyoka, I believe that Jazz told me that there's something you wished to discuss with the team. Kiyoka's eyes widened at what he said, not expecting that. Wait, what? She whipped her head around to Jazz with a shocked expression. You told him. Jazz merely gave a shrug. Hey, I told ya we had to run it by the boss first. Can't work things out if no one else knows about it, Kyo. The team's attention was now squarely on Kiyoka, the punk rocker wincing at their confused and intrigued gazes. She really didn't think she would have to divulge the details on everything this soon. But of course, it wouldn't be fair for the others to not know about it, and the look she was getting from Izuku only reinforced that. Kiyoka, it's probably best to get it over with now, don't you think? He asked. Yeah, you're right, celery stick. Kiyoka sighed, facing the group with a deep breath to bolster her confidence. Alright guys, here's the deal. Once Kiyoka had explained everything, the Autobots and teenagers were all left quite surprised at the development, as well as at her plan in general. Infiltrating a suspicious hero's domicile in the form of an internship in order to get information on him to feed back to the school, it almost sounded like something from out of a movie. Man, that's a lot to take in, if I'm being honest. Setsuna commented. Indeed, and it sounds highly risky. Abara added, cupping her hands together over her chest. Are you absolutely certain about this, Jiro? Itsuka was also a fair bit wary on the plan. Yeah, I mean, at least we knew what we were getting into when we went to help Red Alert. She extended a hand toward the earphone jack user. But this, Snake Eyes, person, who knows what they could be all about? Yes, quite. Tenya affirmed, placing a hand on his chin in thought. Though I've heard whispers going around from upperclassmen commenting on this, Snake Eyes, fellow. And from what you've told us, everything lines up about the rumors. They select a well-performing student in the sports festival every year, and only one, mind you, and no one takes the opportunity since they are seen as suspicious. The blue-haired boy raised an eyebrow to the perplet. Though from what you've said, it seems that you wish to risk taking the mystery on. Kiyoka returned the brow raise in kind. You worried about me, Iida. As your class representative, naturally I would be. Tenya furrowed his brow with the utmost seriousness. You're certain you wish to go through with this? With a simple shrug, Kiyoka brushed it off. Yeah, pretty much. If I can confirm that Snake Eyes is not a threat to the student body, then I'm willing to take that risk. She pointed up to her guardian Autobot. And besides, I'll have Jazz with me the whole time, so if I do get into some sorta sticky situation, he can get me out no problem. For his part, Optimus had to acknowledge that Kiyoka had thought things out fairly well. Your thinking is sound, Kiyoka, and I commend you for it. But still, Tenya makes a fair point. He lowered himself in front of Kiyoka, his optics meeting her eyes. This internship, no, this mission involves a great amount of danger, and you know that you are putting yourself in jeopardy by going through with it. He received a silent nod from Kiyoka, prompting him to give a light sigh. There was no changing her mind on this one. Very well. But if something goes wrong, I want you to contact the base immediately so that we can bridge both of you back as soon as possible. Once we have the coordinates of this hero agency, if it turns out to be fraudulent, we will have the pro-heroes take it from there. Understood. Yes, sir. Kiyoka saluted, glancing over to her class representative. So long as Iida doesn't have an issue with it. As much as Tenya hated to admit it, the plan was well put together. And, while he was still apprehensive about it, he felt compelled to commend Kiyoka for her dedication to keeping the student body safe from potential villains. And besides, I am also taking a great risk myself with my own internship. Tenya subconsciously bit his lip, restraining himself from letting that information out. Jiro, you're a braver soul than I. You have the confidence to let them all know that you're doing something like this, but I cannot. This matter, between the hero killer and I, it is too personal. Steadying himself with a deep breath, Tenya gave her a single nod. Very well. As your class representative, I will approve of this plan. Besides, given that Mr. Aizawa has already approved of it, I'm afraid that his opinion supersedes my own anyway. Kiyoka smirked happily at that. Yeah, kinda. But thanks anyway, Iida. Ooh, look at you, girl. Mina cheered heartily. Going on a full-blown mission with your internship. So freaking lucky. Yeah, best of luck. Eijiro gave a thumbs up. Hope everything goes well. Denki, however, was a bit more sour on it than most. Man, this sucks. Should have known you not going for Gang Orca was a tip-off that you found something way cooler and more interesting. Hey, sorry, jamming yay. Kiyoka snickered as Denki grit his teeth. Maybe next time. All of a sudden, a stay yawned past Kiyoka's lips, taking her and everyone else by surprise. Oh, God, I guess I'm more tired than I thought. Like an infectious bug, the yawn began passing around to everyone else, with Momo stretching her arms over her head. Oh, yes, so am I. We all had a pretty long day today, You all have school tomorrow as well. Optimus rose to his full height, moving his hand toward the ground bridge. Perhaps it would be best if you all head home for the night. We will continue our usual activities and training tomorrow. His focus then went squarely back to Kiyoka. And furthermore, we will discuss the groundwork for your upcoming mission. I hope you will be ready, Kiyoka. I will, thanks, Optimus. Kiyoka gave a big thumbs up to Jazz with a confident grin. Jazz, let's do this right. Hell yeah, girl. Jazz returned the gesture. I'll catch ya on the flip side. The Autobot lieutenant watched as Bumblebee, Bulkhead, and RC gathered up in front of the ground bridge and transformed, allowing the humans to board them before Red Alert activated the vortex. Once the first group went through, it didn't take long for Flare Up and the Street Action Minicon team to follow suit with the 1B students, and just like that, they were gone. Jazz exhaled and set his gaze over to his leader. I won't let anything bad happen to her, Prime. I promise. Optimus reached over and set a hand on Jazz's shoulder. I know you won't, old friend. I trust you will keep her safe. His tone became a bit more somber again as another thought crossed his processor. To be quite honest, out of this entire group, it isn't Kiyoka who concerns me. His optics shifted over to Strongarm, who also seemed rather uncomfortable. And I think you know that, too, don't you? Strongarm could only respond with a silent bow of the head, excusing herself from the conversation. But of course, that was all the answer Optimus needed. Both of them could tell that something was still weighing heavily on Tenya's mind. We'll have to keep an eye on him, Prime thought to himself. It didn't take long for Bumblebee to drop Hatsume off at her place, leaving just Izuku and Kiyoka left. The two teens sat in the back as the Autobot's blonde holoform kept an eye on them from his rearview mirror, watching as they talked about how the day went along with other stuff like homework and music. But of course, the main topics of conversation were the punk rockers' upcoming mission as well as Arizer. Man, I just can't get over it, Kiyoka said with fists clenched in excitement. I mean, Minicons becoming animals is one thing, but a full-sized transformer with a beast mode instead of a vehicle mode is just so awesome. I know, right? Izuku agreed wholeheartedly. Makes you wonder what kind of other sorts of beasts Maximals can become. I hope we get to meet more of them, he trailed off, however, as his mind went back to his best friend's upcoming internship. But I'm not gonna lie, I do kinda wish I could come with you on this mission. That elicited a short scoff from the earphone jack user. PFF'd, Izuku, if you're worried about me, you don't gotta. Everything'll be good, trust me. I know, and I'm not worried, per se. Izuku scratched the back of his head, his cheeks flushing a shade of red. It's just, you're seriously living out one of my biggest childhood fantasies, going on a covert mission, like how an actual hero would. His eyes began shining in admiration for her. That's just so cool, I can hardly stand it. Kiyoka flinched as her own cheeks reddened considerably, and on instinct, she grabbed her jacks and tapped them together in slight embarrassment. Well, I'm glad you think so, and again, thanks for supporting my decision on this. She brought her eyes up and sent him a soft, grateful smile. I'm glad that you've got my back on this one, Izuku, really. Swallowing hard, Izuku curbed his fear and bowed his head back. Why, you're welcome. Any time. There was a long silence as the duo sheepishly looked away from one another for a few moments, but in time, Izuku regained some confidence to speak up again. Kiyoka, ow. Ack. POMF**POMF. Their heads went flying and hit the backs of the front seats as Bumblebee suddenly screeched to a halt, leaving Izuku a bit dazed and Kiyoka very irritated. ZRKT, you have arrived at your destination. Bumblebee announced with a smirk. With a low growl, Kiyoka peeled herself off the headrest and snapped herself around into the front, giving B a glare. Hey, a little warning would have been nice, ya know. The blonde merely responded with a shrug as Kiyoka groaned and retrieved her book bag, shouldering it as she pried Izuku off the other headrest. Hey, get home safe, okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh okay, the wobbly Izuku replied, his eyes filled with swirls. Gee, good night. Yeah, Kiyoka went to open the door, but not before taking a second to ruffle up Izuku's hair a bit. Good night, Green Bean, and thanks again. Broken out of his daze, Izuku shook his head and replied with a slow, why yeah, of course, before Kiyoka disembarked. B waited at the curb until Kiyoka made it to her door, where she waved them off as he drove away. Once he did, though, Izuku slumped down in his seat with a frustrated moan. Aw, damn it, B, did you have to do that? ZKRT, don't worry, we'll get him next time. What is the we in this situation? Back at Kiyoka's house, the punk rocker reached for the doorknob, thankful that she was out of that awkward situation. Great, more stuff to think about tonight. No, focus on the mission, Kiyoka. You can sort out these stupid feelings once that's over. She twisted the knob and opened the door. Just get some studying done, get a little practice in and you'll be good too. There you are. Kiyoka screamed at the top of her lungs and doubled back, scared out of her wits as her father flung open the door. Kyotoku Jiro, the long-haired man decked out in a red button-up shirt, black dress pants and matching shoes, took a confrontational stance against his daughter with a serious tone of voice. You sure took your time getting to the door this time, Kiyoka. Still hanging around with that boy, are we? Dad, what the hell? Kiyoka fired back. What's the deal with scaring the shit out of me? And so what if I did take a bit longer to say bye to my friend this time, Kyotoku grimaced back to her. Well, forgive me if I'm a bit concerned about your safety, Kiyoka. For all I know, that boy could be, URK. All at once, the protective dad act was forcibly dropped when something stunned the man, making him jerk back before he fell flat on his face. Behind him, his wife, Mikajiro, stood with an unimpressed expression with her arms crossed. Her glasses were pushed up so that they shimmered in the light, giving her an intimidating aura. She was also wearing a button-up shirt of her own, this one the color purple, accompanied by a black, knee-length skirt and matching heels. She pulled her own ear jacks back and bit at her husband. That'll be enough out of you, dear. Mika then put on a smile as she greeted her daughter. Welcome back, Kiyoka. Have fun with your friends today. Yep, it was a good day. Kiyoka confirmed as she stepped across her father's back and into her home. So, I'm guessing you guys got a gig tonight. HM, what tipped it off? Mika chuckled. But yes, we'll be out until midnight tonight, so you'll be alone for a while. Gotcha, I'll be fine. I've got some studying and practice to catch up on anyway. Mika leaned down and gave her daughter a peck on the cheek. Good. Also, make sure you start packing for your internship. You'll be gone for a full week, after all. Kiyoka sent her a nod, prompting Mika to reach her jacks down and hoist her husband up. Well, we'll be off, dear. Have a good night. This isn't over, Kiyoka. Kyotoku exclaimed with a jittering voice. I still wanna make sure this b-boy is on the up and up. Oh, for God's sake, would you stop with the overprotective dad act? Kiyoka snapped back with a roll of her eyes. You're not convincing anyone, old man. But fine, you wanna meet Izuku. As soon as internships are over, I'll let you both meet him, how's that? Mika, wearing a surprised yet intrigued smile, was quick to approve the idea. Oh, that sounds fantastic. I would love to finally meet this friend you've been raving about for months now. She clapped her hands together as she settled on an idea. Oh. How about you bring him over for dinner here? Ask him his favorite meal and I'll prepare it. Alright, I'll take you up on that. The Jiro patriarch thrust a finger at her as his wife dragged him out of the house. Don't forget, why you here, young lady? Fine, later. Kiyoka shouted back before slamming the door shut, only to then realize what she had just committed to. She had just agreed to bringing Izuku over to meet her parents, and that was when a terrifying thought settled into Kiyoka's head. Oh god, not only will that old fart try to be overprotective of her, but mom's liable to bring out the baby pictures. She flushed red as a beet while her jacks went out of control, flailing in the air at the sides of her head. I am going to die from humiliation. It took Kiyoka a while to push those horrific thoughts out of her mind for the time being, and even then, they still lingered in the back as she focused on her studying. And, as much as doing that was hell on her brain, it at least kept those thoughts at bay for a good couple of hours. Once she deemed study time over, though, she shifted focus to her true passion, music practice. Of course, she knew how to basically play every instrument in her room at this point, from the basic guitar all the way to the accordion that she barely touched and yet somehow still had for some reason. But it was better to play them consistently to keep herself from getting rusty, except the accordion, because screw that. Wonder if Mina would be interested in it. The punk rocker wondered to herself. She seems like the kinda gal who'd love polka. Kiyoka instinctively went to her favorite guitar and picked it up, plugging it into her amp and going through the usual tune-up until it was exactly where she wanted it. And then, she closed her eyes and laid down on her bed, her legs dangling over the side as she contemplated what to play. Usually, she let her own feelings dictate the song, but as her mind trailed back to the whole thing with her parents and Izuku that she inadvertently arranged. And by proxy, her mind settled on the green-haired boy who she had complicated feelings for. Gah! Kiyoka snarled as she snapped up straight, trying to shake him out. But, as much as she wanted to, she couldn't deny the growing feelings for her best friend. Damn it, Izuku. Why do you have to make it all so, slowly but surely? The realization dawned on Kiyoka, and she began strumming notes on her guitar, the music coming through naturally and without restriction. As she did so, she tapped her foot to a beat that had settled in her head, all while lyrics flowed past her lips. Cause life's like this. That's the way it is. And then, chill out, what you yellin' for? Lay back, it's all been done before. And if you could only let it be, you will see. I like you the way you are. When we're driving in your car. And you're talking to me one-on-one. But you've become somebody else round everyone else. You're watching your back like you can't relax. You're trying to be cool, you look like a fool to me. Tell me, why'd ya have to go and make things so complicated? I see the way you actin' like you're somebody else, gets me frustrated. Life's like this, and you fall, and you crawl, and you break. And you take what you get and you turn it into honesty and promise me, I'm never gonna find you fake it. No, no, no. As Kiyoka finished the first verse, she could already feel her stress beginning to lift up and off her shoulders, venting it all through song. It may not have been the perfect analogous melody for the situation between her and Izuku, but considering the situation, it was close enough. However, as she was about to proceed to the second verse, she found herself spinning toward her bedroom window, and when she peered out into the darkness, a chill went through her entire being. When she saw that it was open, and a woman was now standing in her room. Iye. Kiyoka belted out a scream and, without even thinking, unplugged her guitar, tossed it onto her bed, and then ran straight for the accordion to use it as a bludgeoning device. Who the fuck are you? The figure, donned in red and black garb and with her head mostly covered in a mask and cowl, didn't even flinch at her reaction, merely giving her a nod. So you finally noticed me. She spoke with a light, yet somewhat husky voice, one who sounded to be in her late 20s or early 30s. I was wondering if you'd get too lost in your music to notice. I'm gonna call the cops on you, lady. Kiyoka lashed out. Very well, if you so wish. Wait, what? The mysterious woman merely gave a shrug. I'll be gone by the time they get here. I merely came here to deliver a message to you, Kiyoka Jiro. Kiyoka's jaw dropped when her name was uttered. How do you know my, but then, the more she stared at the woman, the more she took in her true appearance. For she wasn't some masked robber or a serial killer who had just randomly snuck into her home. She was a ninja, one donned in a black shirt under a traditional, red awagi with black trim around the edges. Her awagi had long sleeves that were strapped down to her biceps thanks to a pair of black bracers, and she had a matching set of fingerless Teko gloves on her hands. Her hakama trousers were also red, and strapped down near the bottoms by black kyahan wrappings. She wore black tabi boots with the big toe split off from the rest, and her head was wrapped in red zukin and fukuman for the traditional ninja-styled mask, though she broke from the norm by having her long, black hair stick out from the back of it in a ponytail. The woman completed her look with a black sash across her waist and, on her left breast, her awagi had a black dragon symbol on it. All of this was quite a lot for Kiyoka to take in, but once it finally did, she managed to utter, "Why you're a kunoichi." The woman's dark eyes widened under her mask. So you know your terminology. Good, you're more knowledgeable on the subject than we anticipated. She reached up and undid her mask, revealing a rather beautiful young woman behind it. The first thing Kiyoka took note of was her long twin bangs as they fell out of her mask, framing her visage as they neared her chin. She also had dark brown eyes and a medium skin tone, as well as dark lipstick to complement it. The woman bowed to Kiyoka with a greeting smile. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Miss Jiro. Please believe me, I mean you no harm, so could you maybe please set the instrument down? Again, I ask, how do you know my name? Kiyoka kept the accordion in hand, but lowered it for the time being. And who are you, anyway? I come courtesy of the Snake Eyes Hero Agency. The ninja lady replied, making Kiyoka's mouth fall open and her eyebrows shoot up. Got your attention now, do I? I had a feeling I would. She placed a hand over her chest. As for myself, I cannot divulge my true name to you, as that is a secret that I keep very close. But for now, you can call me, Jinx. Jinx, Kiyoka rolled the name off her tongue with trepidation. Oh okay, so why did you break into my home? You're not gonna kidnap me or anything, are you? Jinx deadpanned and raised a brow at her. Miss Jiro, what did I just say? I'm here to deliver a message, not anything villainous. Kiyoka put her scowl back on. Well, sorry, but forgive me for being cautious around a freaking ninja. She put a defiant hand to her him. So, I'm guessing that your master's got some sort of preemptive test he wants to give me or something. What gave you that idea? Well, the fact that no one seems to know about your agency outside of a few select people is pretty suspect, not gonna lie. Kiyoka explained. And if this is actually some sort of super secret ninja school, I guess that'd make sense. But, I can't rule you guys out on having any ulterior motives. After all, ninja can be pretty two-faced from what I hear. Closing her eyes, Jinx hummed and nodded. I see, so you took on the internship because you were suspicious about our intent on recruiting certain UA students in the past. Her eyes opened back up and she zeroed in on Kiyoka. But I guess I can't blame you for that. As you said, ninja have a history of being duplicitous. That being said, I assure you that we are not like any of the sort. My master Snake Eyes only wishes to recruit and train the best of the best to become great heroes in the future. Jinx approached the punk rocker, wearing a genuine grin upon her lips. Kiyoka, we see great potential in you to be one of those heroes. So please, I encourage you to come and learn under my master. He will help bring out your true potential, you'll see. As much as she didn't want to say otherwise, Kiyoka didn't hear any hint of a lie behind Jinx's voice. Her sincerity seemed genuine, for sure, but if there was one thing being with the Autobots for a while had taught her, it was that you couldn't be so quick to trust. But for the time being, she would go along with it. Sounds like your master's pretty good. The best of the best. Jinx asserted. Pursing her lips, Kiyoka feigned consideration only to accept immediately. Alright, I'll bite. This place does sound pretty cool. So am I gonna learn how to become some awesome kunoichi warrior? Only if you wish. Jinx chuckled. We actually offer several forms of teachings. From the way of the ninja to other forms of martial arts as well as weapons training, espionage, and much more. Reaching around to her back pocket, Jinx pulled out a metal card and handed it to Kiyoka. Here, this is the address of our agency's dojo. Kiyoka took the card, seeing that it had a holographic display built into it. Let me guess, holo GPS. Exactly. Simply activate it when you depart and it will lead you straight to us. Jinx confirmed before leaping backward toward the window, much to Kiyoka's surprise. But you must tell no one else about this. Our agency must remain a secret to the rest of the world. She narrowed her eyes slightly at the punk rocker. If you are followed, we will know about it. But then, Jinx's smile returned. We will be eagerly awaiting your arrival in a week's time, Miss Jiro. Safe journey. Pulling her Zukin and Fukuman back over her head, Jinx performed a backflip out the window, leading Kiyoka to rush over and look down below for her. But just as suddenly as she appeared, Jinx was gone, disappeared into the night. Swallowing hard, Kiyoka let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and finally dropped the accordion, sauntering back over to her bed and landing in it face down. That had been a lot to take in. She had signed up to a freaking ninja school. Guess that explains the secrecy, but now the missions become even more complicated. I gotta make sure that they don't find out about the Autobots. Kiyoka reached for her phone on her nightstand, and with a few quick clicks, began messaging the base. I've gotta tell Optimus. Meanwhile, high above the stratosphere of Earth, the inky blackness of space rippled before a Cybertronian ship suddenly appeared out of nowhere, having deactivated its cloak. It was a rather sizable one, too. Not as big as the dark side, but big enough to not be classified as a standard space cruiser. While the ship decloaked, though, it still masked its signal, leaving Autobot and Decepticon alike unaware of its presence. Inside, the bridge of the ship was dark and shadowy, though the light of Earth's moon did manage to shine in through the front window. In the pilot's seat, a large, burly bot with a Decepticon badge on his chest narrowed his optics at the blue orb below, giving a guttural growl before speaking up. Hey, boss, we made it. He spoke in a deep, gravely baritone. Excellent. We made great timing. Even managed to shake that Autobot that was following us, HM. Behind the pilot, up in the captain's chair, another bot sat, still completely in shadow aside from his bright, purple optics. He stood up and put his hands behind his back. So, this is where that strange transwarp signal came from. The heck is this planet called again? I believe the locals call it, Earth. The pilot chuffed at that. Bah, sounds stupid. Maybe so, but the fact that we're getting traces of both Autobot and Decepticon signals from down there is oh so intriguing to me. A smile came to the mech, his shiny metal teeth gleaming as he stepped foot into the light. And that can only mean one thing, they're continuing the war on this planet. And you know what that means. Now fully in the light, the bot was revealed to also be a Decepticon, the symbol emblazoned in the center of his chest. His body was mainly decked out in heavy, mustardy yellow-colored armor plating, which covered his back, his arms and his lower legs, except for his biceps, thighs, hands and feet, which were in lighter black plating. His torso, however, was entirely purple, with a set of blue-colored air vents on each of his pectorals. Finally, the Khan's black helm was very blocky and squat, his metal complexion being a charcoal gray. Breaking up the dark tones of his head were, of course, his purple optics, which were just as square as his head itself was, almost like a visor but not really. Rubbing his hands together with eager aplomb, the Decepticon known as Swindle chuckled to himself. Hee, it means this is gonna a good place to set up shop. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 23 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.